HMRC, which ends up being incorrect, or any other communications with the state, which ends up being incorrect, would be slightly nervous about allowing them to go straight into your bank account.
Is this the issue with this, then? It's not that we shouldn't be able to get money back from those people who've cheated the system. It's the fact that if that power is in place, it's how else could it be used? Of
course. Once it's in place, it's in place. It's going to be in place for everyone. It's absolutely nonsensical that it would just be in place for people committing benefit fraud. It would be greenlit for everyone. So I think that's where the concern is. I mean, Liz Kendall is saying that these measures would save her department and the taxpayer nearly $2 billion a year, which, of course, would be good. And you have to see this all in the context of Rachel Reeves' upcoming budget, where she's basically saying, I have to raise billions and billions of pounds from everyone. She's told every department to go away and start making not cuts, but making savings. And this looks very much like officials saying, right, how are we going to finally claw back this benefit fraud? This is how we can save some money. But the question is, have they actually thought this through, or are they doing it to protect their funding packet for the next year? Because if this kind of measure isn't done properly, then it can be...
presumably that this would only be applicable anyway after the individual concerned has been charged and tried and found guilty of fraud.
That's not clear, actually, because this article is saying that the current way of clawing back money is to take them to court. So this is actually suggesting they're trying to circumvent that.
But that's not right. Look at the post office scandal.
Quite. I think you're completely right on that. And effectively, the people we're talking about here are the country's poorest, and them being the poorest, they're also going to be the less... They're not exactly going to have access to expensive lawyers to challenge this. So, yeah, big questions. Big questions what they're actually going to do.
Except when people are taken to court and told they have to pay back a certain amount of money, of course, then it's often... Well, you pay £5 a week or whatever it is, so it takes forever to pay it back. If the government can then say, well, actually, we're going to take substantially more than that.
And I wonder if all of this is actually trying to send a signal that they can have that power. Maybe they won't necessarily use it, but they can start threatening it in the letters that they deliver.
Yeah, I mean, the example you just gave there, I mean, that means that the government is going to take, or the Department of Work and Pensions is going to take the decision to be able to take money from your account. Well, what about your children? What about your dependents? How are you going to feed them, for instance? Are they going to think of things like that?
I suppose the argument there would be, well, you shouldn't have pinched the money in the first place.
Well, no, you shouldn't have, but if their action ultimately lands you in a situation where you can't even afford to feed the children, then that's not right either.
Well, and it sounds like it's obviously a blunt instrument, because just by them admitting that it's the total amount of fraud is $7 billion a year, and yet they're only going to claw back $1.6 billion, that means they don't know exactly how to target it, which suggests that they're not going to target all of it. They're probably going to also target some people who are innocent and therefore should not have money clawed out of their bank account. Yeah,
it is very difficult. And yet, as you say, so it seems like the instrument is too blunt, but the idea isn't bad. And as you say, you know, everything is out of date.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm not surprised that it's out of date, and I'm not surprised that they are looking at this as a way to try and raise some money, but... And pretty much anyone in the country would be horrified by some of the benefit fraud that does go on.
Yeah. But at the same time, you have to ask, do you trust government to take the right decisions in investigating you, looking into your bank account and thinking, yeah, she can afford 20 quid a week or something? Exactly. I don't know. Would we trust the government to do that? It is a bit, isn't it? It sort of feels that way.
Oh, well, interesting. We'll talk to you a little bit later on. And thanks very much indeed.
Let's talk about the royals now. And the King and Queen have begun their landmark tour of Australia by joining a church congregation for Sunday service.
There was a small protest, but royal fans far outnumbered them. The King and Queen arrived in Sydney on Friday for that 6-day visit to the Commonwealth nation to celebrate its people, its culture and its heritage.
And our royal correspondent Cameron Walker has the latest from Sydney.
Welcome home, Your Majesties, just, I think, sums up the mood here in northern Sydney this morning. The King and Queen attended a church service at St Thomas's Church in northern Sydney, meeting the local congregation, but also, of course, meeting the crowds. Over 1,000 people estimated to have been here, braving the heat. Of course, it's summer here in Australia, in order to try and catch a glimpse or even meet Their Majesties the King and Queen, and several were lucky enough to do so. It's clearly a very packed schedule. The King will be off to the New South Wales Parliament, where he'll be attending a reception celebrating the bicentenary of the Legislative Council here in New South Wales. He also has 2 private audiences with the Governor-General of Australia and the Governor of New South Wales, Margaret Beazley, as well. I spoke to some members of the crowd, and here is what they said.
We're very excited for the King and Queen to come.
Very excited.
Let's go.
We basically missed our own service to come and get a glimpse of him, so yeah, it was very exciting.
Seen him as Prince before, first time as King.
I remember him as a young boy at school in Victoria.
I was around when his mother made the first trip to Australia in 1954. I was a little girl at school.
He's done pretty well at age 75 to come all this way.
They represent so much good in the world.
I'm a big supporter of the Royal. I born in Nepal, live in Australia.
Now, the noise from the crowd was electric when the King and Queen were doing their walkabout, and it certainly drowned out the noise of a small number of protesters which were also here outside the church to, let's say, greet Their Majesties. I'm not sure they would see it that way.
I want to say to King Charles, give my land back. This land was colonised. This land was taken by force of brutality through massacres of First Nations people.
Always was, always will be!
Aboriginal land! The King is clearly very mindful of the fact that he's been diagnosed with cancer, and his schedule has been designed in such a way to allow him time to rest. That's why there was no engagements carried out yesterday. The engagements kind of stop mid-afternoon today, and then tomorrow he'll be flying on to Canberra with Her Majesty the Queen for several other engagements.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I can understand those people who are very angry about it. I can understand their thought process, but does it really make that much of a difference to them to be?
I don't know.
I mean, it's not as if he's down there laying out the law all the time.
No,
it's just
absolutely.
It's symbolic, isn't it? I don't know. I just think it's quite nice.
What you mean?
I quite like having royals.
I do. I think most of us do, ultimately. And as I was pointing out yesterday, you know, a lot of people make a big fuss, particularly in Australia, about wanting to get rid of them until they meet them. And then they're just as knocked out as anyone else. It is a bit of a thrill, and it's nice to have them.
Yeah,
I think we'd miss them so badly if they went.
I think we would.
Yeah.
Right, 16 minutes past 6. Let's have a look at some of the other main stories heading into the newsroom today.
Well, Sir Chris Hoy, one of Britain's greatest cyclists and Olympians, has announced that his cancer is terminal, and he says he's only got 2 to 4 years to live. Back in February, he did say he felt forced to reveal his cancer diagnosis publicly when he was undergoing treatment. He's the 3rd most decorated British Olympian of all time, with 6 career golds and 1 silver.
Zayn Malik has announced he's going to reschedule his US tour after the heartbreaking death of his former One Direction bandmate Liam Payne. That's as Liam's father paid tribute to his son outside the hotel in Argentina where Liam died. Meanwhile, officials confirmed a search of the hotel found narcotics, alcohol and destroyed objects in the room.
Benjamin Netanyahu has promised to punish Iran after Hezbollah launched a drone at the Israeli Prime Minister's residence yesterday morning. Both Netanyahu and his wife were out when it struck. And according to reports, the drone strike caused little damage to the home. But I tell you what, that's quite a shock that the drone got through, isn't it?
Yeah, well, this is the advantage of the drone stuff, isn't it? Is that it seems to be able to bypass the Iron Dome a little bit better. But those Iron Dome's sort of geared towards rockets rather than drones.
But the Prime Minister's own residence, you'd think, would be guarded better in some way, wouldn't you, against drone attack?
Maybe. Don't forget, I mean, Downing Street was hit back in the 80s, wasn't it, by the IRA and things, pipe bombs over the back garden wall and all that sort of thing. So it does happen. It'll all be tightened up now.
It will, certainly, won't it? Because that would be a hell... I was going to say hell of a shock, but it won't. Well, I've just said it, haven't I? Hell of a shock to him, yes, it really will.
Right, let's see what the weather's going to do for you today, because there's a lot of concern over the storm that's heading our way. Here's Ellie Glazer.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Ashley will bring strong winds and heavy rain to much of the UK today, with amber and yellow weather warnings in force. The area of rain that we can see out there at the moment continues to push its way eastwards through this morning, but it's in western parts of Scotland that we'll see those strongest winds today. Gusts of 70 to 80 miles an hour are possible, but even along Irish Sea coastal regions, we could still see those gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour. As that rain band pushes its way eastwards, it will turn a little drier across much of England and Wales, and temperatures still above average for the time of year, though definitely feeling cooler than we saw yesterday. As we then go into this evening, we start to see a further area of rain moving in from the northwest as we go through Sunday evening. This affecting parts of Northern Ireland and particularly parts of Scotland, where we could see some heavy downpours over the high ground. Turning a little more showery as we go further east, but those outbreaks of rain do continue across parts of Northern Ireland through the evening, so perhaps leading some localised flooding in places. For much of England and Wales, though, it will be a mostly dry end to the day on Sunday. Perhaps still a little cloud and rain just lingering in the very far southeast for a time, but that clearing its way eastwards as we go into the early hours of Monday morning. Still remaining very wet and blustery across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and the winds gradually easing as we go through the early hours of Monday, but still remaining very windy to start the day. It will be quite a mild start to the day on Monday as well. Temperatures generally remaining in the double figures for most places, particularly where that cloud persists overnight, and still remaining very blustery to start on Monday. But those winds will gradually start to ease as we go through the day, though the showers still pushing in from the west, spreading their way eastwards through the morning. A little cloudier across the very far south of England. We've got this next area of rain just skirting along the very far southeast coast as we go through the afternoon. So a bit of a damp end to the day here and plenty of showers elsewhere, with temperatures a little closer to average for the time of year, 15 or 16 in the south and around 12 or 13 further north.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 6:23 now. Storm Ashley is going to hit parts of the UK. The Met Office warning that there is a danger to life.
Yeah, this comes as the Great North Run, I think, has been cancelled due to safety concerns.
Let's talk to weather journalist Nathan Rao, who joins us. Good to see you, Nathan. Just how bad is Ashley going to be and where?
Right, well, as Ellie mentioned, there is an amber warning out for Ashley. I mean, a lot of the country is in for a very bumpy ride today as Ashley blows in from the Atlantic. The amber warning is in northwest Scotland for wind gusts of up to 80 miles per hour, and that is really what this danger to life warning is about, particularly around exposed regions and around the coast. But really the whole of the country is going to have a very wet and windy day today. The wind warning is the particular concern, and that is what triggers the storm names and the warnings. And it's down the west coast of the UK where these winds are going to be strongest. And that is up to, as I said, 80 mile per hour gusts, but 50 to 70 mile per hour further inland. There is also a rain warning in place across the southwest. So yes, a very, very wet and windy day for the first storm of the season. It's come quite late in the season. The storm season starts in September. We're now in the middle of October, but Ashley is going to arrive and sort of make up for lost time. Quite a powerful storm system moving through today and into the early hours of tomorrow.
Clearly, even though it's going to be concentrated further north, the south is going to feel it because we've heard that the Great South Run, I mistakenly said north earlier, it's the Great South Run, which happens in Portsmouth, has been cancelled because of the forecast of high winds and rain. So clearly the organisers feel it's just going to make life down there, even in Portsmouth, impossible today.
Yes, it is. I mean, this is the first storm of the season, but it's a particularly powerful storm. As in the run-up to this storm arriving, meteorologists and experts were talking about something called explosive cyclogenesis. To put it into layman's terms, in the media, we often call this a weather bomb, which means a very, very rapid and intense strengthening of this storm. So even though it's coming into the northwest of the country, the impacts of it are going to be felt really across the whole of the UK through today. And if you look at some of the satellite images, and for people like me, this is fascinating, it looks like it's coming loaded with a sting jet. And what a sting jet is, it's a very, very, very rapid core of air that makes these storms even more powerful and even more dangerous. So yes, the whole of the country is going to be affected by this storm throughout the day. The warnings are in place right the way throughout the day and in Scotland through the early hours of tomorrow. And it's going to have some impact. If you're travelling today, definitely worth looking at the weather forecasts and looking at the travel advisories. And if you're going to events today, yes, certainly, as you mentioned with the sporting events, there may well be events cancelled or impacted by the storm as it moves through into the early hours of tomorrow.
Is it a sign of things to come, do we think, in the run-up to Christmas?
It may well be. Now, I've had a look at the Met Office's 3-month contingency planner, which is a planner they put out to warn authorities about potential weather events. And it's saying there's a slightly increased chance of more windy weather in the next couple of months, actually, in the run-up to December. Now, this windy weather is always driven, Stephen, as you know, our favourite thing, the jet stream. And the jet stream is particularly strong, and it steers windy and wet and stormy systems in from the Atlantic, but it can also strengthen them. In fact, the storm Ashley, it's the jet stream that is responsible for strengthening this storm so rapidly. The storm has moved from the warmer side of the jet stream to the colder side of the jet stream, and that has caused a rapid intensification. And if we stay in the path of this jet stream through the coming weeks, and there's no suggestion that we wouldn't stay in this Atlantic jet streamy period, then yes, it may be a sign of things to come. And we are, after all, in the storm season. The storm season ends in December, so there's always going to be a risk of wet and windy, stormy weather right through to the run-up to Christmas.
That sounds as though it's just sort of going to be pretty bleak, wet and windy right through November.
Doesn't sound very good, does it?
No.
I mean, after this storm has passed through, the Met Office's medium range forecast is saying a bit more unsettled weather to come, but no more storms in the forecast in the foreseeable future. But yes, there's always a risk. In fact, over the past few years, when I've been covering weather during the Christmas, late autumn, winter period, it's always been more stormy and wet and windy rather than cold and snowy, which usually comes in the beginning of the year, January, February, even early spring period. So, into storm period. Storm Ashley, is it a harbinger of something to come? I don't know, but best to keep on watch and look out for any more to come.
So it's going to be a wet Christmas, not a white Christmas.
Yeah, well, when do we ever get a white one?
Well, I know.
That reminds
this far in advance, it's always very risky to put on.
That reminds me, are you on snowflake watch this year?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're always on snowflake watch. We're in the middle of October now, so I imagine we'll start thinking of things like, am I going to be brave enough to say the words White Christmas? Probably in around the next 4 or 5 weeks or so, but certainly snowflake watch.
I can't believe we're talking about Christmas.
Not so far away.
It is a bit early to talk about Christmas. We haven't even had Halloween yet.
It's nearly November.
I know. That one's on me. My bad.
No. Yeah. All right, Nathan, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. No, Nathan's one of those people who actually has to look out for snowflakes on Christmas Day.
It's his job too.
So, if there is technically a white Christmas...
Well, but there's always a snowflake somewhere, isn't there?
No, always. Because you can put bets on it.
Really?
Yeah.
There's a snowflake somewhere in Britain, in the Peak District or something. Or
There's rules.
OK, all right.
You could put a bet on. How about putting 36 grand on there being a white Christmas?
Well, if I won 36 grand, there's absolutely no way I'd put it down as a bet on a white Christmas.
No, quite
right. No.
Quite right too. But at least you could get your hands on £36,000. But the clock is ticking, less than a week to go. Here are the details.
Here are the details.
This is the final week to grab your luck.
Good luck indeed. Do stay with us. We'll be talking sport in a couple of moments, and then, of course, there'll be the newspapers.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Serving some of the most talked about food in Chelsea, executive head chef of Number 50 Cheney, Ian Smith, has created a range of menus with a hint of the homeland, using the finest British ingredients sourced by trusted suppliers. Ian Smith was head chef at Jason Atherton's Social Eating House and spent time in the kitchens of the Galvin brothers. Ian joins me now to tell more of the story. Tell me about Number 50 Cheney.
Yes, so we are a beautiful restaurant down in a corner of Chelsea on the Embankment with an amazing team. And we really pride ourselves on, being an affordable luxury that people, really are wanting to return to week in, week out.
What's the view from your restaurant?
Well, you can see the Embankment, the Thames, and Albert Bridge, which is very nice.
Very nice.
Actually lit up. Very romantic.
And tell me a little bit about your philosophy. I was talking there about having a touch of the homeland, British food, seasonal food.
Yes. Yeah, I think, for me, great cooking is, with simplicity on finest ingredients, cooked with simplicity, and ultimately, there to be enjoyed through... Yeah, sorry.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to say, it starts as a young person's business. You went into it very young, didn't you? 15?
Yes. Yeah, so I was 15. I sat in my parents' bedroom, called the Ritz, the Dorchester and Claridge's, and very luckily, a man on the end of the phone, 21 years ago, sent me on to a college course called the Specialised Chef Scholarship. 3 days later, I had a Ritz stamp letter through the post, and off me and my parents went, and luckily I got on the course.
And how old were you when you got your first responsibility, would you say?
I think the biggest responsibility in my career is today. Leading Number 50 Cheney.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here
We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. We were just noticing in the paper that John Lennon's amp,
from 1962.
It's a Vox amp, and they used it when they sang at the Cavern Club, the Beatles, and then they used it at Abbey Road when they recorded Please Please Me. So it's a famous amp. It's going up for auction if you fancy it. 200 grand they expect to get for it.
Probably not very good.
It wouldn't. It would be useless. 1962 amp, wouldn't it? I mean, talk about old tech.
Yeah.
But people love their sort of bits and pieces, you know, memorabilia.
Well, yeah, someone will love it.
Someone will.
Right, let's look at the sport. Mark Foster's here. We're kicking off with this awful news, actually. Chris Hoy's cancer is terminal. I wonder why he's decided to release it, because apparently he's known for a year.
He's known for a while. I guess he kept things quiet and kept things private because of his own personal life, and didn't know the extent of it until he knows the extent of it. I don't know. I do know him.
He's a nice man.
Lovely man.
Lovely
really,
man.
really nice man.
I've interviewed him a couple of times, and he's just he's very generous, very giving.
Yeah. He's won 11 world titles, 6 Olympic titles.
What
it
a
just shows
career.
you that.
But he's only 48, and apparently, we were talking earlier, he went to the doctor first with an aching shoulder.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Which he
and you would
put
think
down
being, well, exactly.
in the gym.
Well, yeah.
Wouldn't you think, being an athlete, being somebody like that, you'd think it's just a physical
he's a man
injury.
mountain.
Yeah.
He's a man mountain.
Yeah.
His legs are like tree trunks. But when he keeps himself incredibly fit, every time we go away, Olympic Games and you see him, he looks like he did when he was riding the bike because he loves working out. But yeah, when you see someone like that fit, so strong, and I guess the other thing is so used to pushing his body to extremes and used to living with aches and pains.
Yes, so an aching shoulder you wouldn't think would be alarming. You'd think it would just be a physical problem in the shoulder. But it turned out that it was a tumour, but not the primary tumour. That was in his prostate. And there were other tumours all over the body. It had spread. So that's why.
But
I guess
he seems quite positive.
Yes.
Which is... I always think that's quite remarkable with people facing all of this.
He said that he feels very lucky that at least this has happened to him at a time when there are medicines available that will at least give him 2 to 4 years.
But as he says, this is nature.
Yeah, well,
we're all born and we all die. It's just part of the process.
But he's only 48.
Well,
he's got 2 children, and terribly sadly as well, his wife is not well. She's got multiple sclerosis.
I guess everybody reflects in different ways, right? I suppose the thing is you can go down one hole or think of what bright side or dark side, looking at the bright side and going, well, what time have I got left? How am I going to use it?
Yeah, which is a very positive thing, and let's hope people take some lessons and comfort from that. But it's a real shame. What's going on with Bournemouth?
What's going on with Bournemouth? Well, Bournemouth beat Arsenal yesterday. Arsenal now only 8 games into the Premier League season, and in 3 of those games have had a man sent off. Against Man City they drew, against Brighton they drew, and then yesterday got a man sent off, Saliba, in the 30th minute, and Bournemouth went on to win 2-0. So sort of ill-disciplined. Rice
That's quite a win for Bournemouth against Arsenal.
Great win, absolutely great win. But I guess if Arsenal are going to be pushing for the title, it's tiny margins, and those tiny margins at the moment are going against them, and just from ill-discipline.
Yeah. Well, that is bad discipline, isn't it? I mean, questions need to be asked if they've 3 times now.
3 out of 8. I mean, I'll probably say...
that is pretty bad.
I think in the whole of the last season, probably 3 in 38 games. So, yeah, it's early doors. And it just shows you, I suppose one of those things, when you want something so badly, do you just make silly mistakes.
Yeah, or maybe.
Well,
maybe that's it.
Got to be more
Maybe that's it.
disciplined,
Mind you, it's looking slightly better news for Eric Ten Hag over at Man United.
Yeah,
he needed a bit of a break.
he has come under fire, and I suppose they were sitting in 14th before yesterday, which for Manchester United is not a good. I think it's the lowest they've ever sat in the Premier League at this point of the season. He got a good win yesterday against Brentford. They were down 1-0 at the beginning of the game by half-time. They got 2 in the second half and then came back and ran out winners. I think it's one of these things. He's come under a lot of fire, as you say. But his first season he won the League Cup. His second season he won the FA Cup. You know, and as a Spurs fan, I'd take a trophy of any sort at the moment. But yeah, they're sitting in 11th. He seems to be. I'm not sure if it's the stay of execution. It's just been put off for another week. I don't know because I'm not sure what goes on behind the scenes at Man U. But a great result for them yesterday. But yesterday was a sort of. It was red cards all over the place. Anderson was sent off for Fulham against Villa. So there was another sending off down there. Kudos was sent off against West Ham for West Ham against Spurs yesterday. So yesterday was a story of sort of red cards. But Ange got his Spurs back on track and they won.
Oh, Ange Postecoglou.
Ange Postecoglou. We love a bit of Ange.
You do. Everyone loves Ange Postecoglou, but he's no nonsense, isn't
I think he just sort of, I would say, says it as it is. He doesn't sort of say the sound bite that everyone else wants to hear. He just sort of speaks his mind. And it was that Aussie.
He's the Spurs manager.
Oh, Ange
Postecoglou.
Wonderful name.
Australian.
Oh, really?
Australian Greek, yeah.
What about today's matches? What's on today?
Today you've got Liverpool, a great match, Liverpool against Chelsea.
That'll be a big one.
It's going to be a big one. Chelsea back on track because this season they've looked really good under Mascherano. So that's going to be the lunchtime kickoff. So that's 4 o'clock kickoff. And you've also got Man City away at Wolves. So let's see how Man City get back on. Will they get back?
Let's see if either of them beat the weather.
True.
Because the weather, by then could be quite bad.
Could be grim, yeah.
With Storm Ashley.
Is Ashley a he or a she?
Well, it doesn't really matter, does it? Well, that's interesting, because the next one will have to be... will give us a clue as to whether Ashley was a he or a she.
Yeah, so it says it does matter.
Yeah, clearly does.
Mark, thank you. We'll see you a bit later on. I'm not as green as I'm cabbage looking.
True.
Right, we've got the papers heading away in just a minute with Andy Jones and Scarlett Maguire.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
The Daily Mail now, Josh, and pub landlords have to worry about more than the optics when it comes to offensive banter,
Yeah,
it
this
seems.
is a really big story and important. Pub landlords could have to become banter cops to stop themselves being sued by staff offended by comments from customers under workers' rights reform. So, Labour, when they were part of their election process, they were like, we're going to reform workers' rights, and that all sounds good on paper, but there were issues in terms of how might it affect employees and fear from employees costing them more money. One of these things that they're sort of pushing through, though, is that in the Equality Act of 2010, part of the issue was that if you were offended at work or someone said something sexist or racist, something that affected you, the employer had to take some sort of... they had three chances to kind of take action.
Yeah.
Now, the employer has to should have taken action already. So employees can sue employers. Now, this has a big impact on us because we're comics and we perform in venues. And if some of the bar staff hear a joke that they don't like, then they can sue their employer, potentially, under this legislation.
So it's not punters?
Well, also, it could be like you're at a bar and some bloke is like, oh, I like that top, or whatever. That's not good behaviour. But the point is now that employee could sue their employer.
So, because, I mean, the sort of scenario I was imagining was that a barmaid was being maybe sexually harassed or
That's
something.
That's what they're focusing in this article, but other articles have gone down the free speech route. Okay. And also venues and universities having lectures. We saw it at, in Edinburgh Fringe Festival and Sadowitz. he had a show cancelled because not because of any punters, but because two of the 18-year-olds were working. They were upset.
There was a bar in Brighton, wasn't there? There was a story we covered a few weeks ago. A bar in Brighton threw some people out. Because
They had turfs on the.
Turfs. Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
We were talking...
Scarlett Maguire. So that's why Labour didn't win under. Well, not that he stood an election, did he, for Johnson?
Actually, we should explain this.
It's sartorial. No, you're wrong. No. Scarlett Maguire.
Yeah.
There you go.
We're going to be looking through the newspapers in a minute, but it was your little altercation with Scarlett was about the button done up on your jacket.
As she said, I shouldn't have the buttons done up on the jacket.
Yeah. And what neither of us realised was that there is a rule to buttons being done up on.
If you've got a 3-button jacket for gentlemen, it's sometimes, always, never for how you fasten them.
Yeah.
And if it's a 2-button jacket, it's always and never. So you never do the bottom button, like you don't on a waistcoat. Of
course.
Do you? Never do the bottom button on a waistcoat.
Don't you?
No, you don't. No.
I'm doing it now. The thing is,
Andy is also here.
It doesn't matter if your jacket's done up or not, but it does matter if your trousers are done up. No,
that does matter.
That's the only thing you've got to remember about.
But I think jackets look better not done up, particularly if one's got a bit of a tummy.
Oh, yeah, well, you're trying to say
I didn't say you had for a second.
It's got slander here.
It is.
We're supposed to be squabbling about the news, not.
Yeah, we are.
Well, we will soon.
Let's crack on with it, actually.
Can I make one more point?
Oh, go on, yes.
We were worrying about whether Storm Ashley is a female storm or a male storm, right? Because you can't tell. And I thought the only way you can tell is what the next one will be. The next one is Bert.
So it's Ashley, a very female storm, is coming to us.
Yeah.
Should spell it with an E-I-G-H then, shouldn't they?
But no, I think no. Can be, no. Lots of female Ashleys are L-E-Y.
L-E-Y.
Yeah.
Well, that's totally wrong, obviously.
We're having lots of differences
Yes,
of opinion.
exactly. If you go to Ireland...
Oh, here we go.
where I've just come back from, it's A-I-S, and then it's L-I-N-G.
It's the Irish actually decide on the names.
Oh, it is.
Because it hits them first.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, there you go.
Well, it's lucky we're not going to get...
You wait till Storm Ewan comes, because that's spelt E with an acute accent, O-W-Y-N.
Oh.
Is that Yon or Un or... I don't know.
I don't know. I can't even see that on the list.
That one.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Or is that Owen? Owen.
I don't know. If you live in Ireland, would you let us know?
Yes.
How do you pronounce... Oh, no, you can't do that, can you? Well, you could. You could phonetically spell it, yeah. E with an acute accent, O-W-Y-N. When...
And then we've got Ochi.
Yes,
O-T-J...
There's some unusual names this time round.
Well, let's hope they never arrive.
Well, let's hope so.
Let's hope Ashley identifies as a light breeze.
We're all being very feisty this morning, which is quite nice for a Sunday. Andy, let's get feisty over Labour in The Observer, the winners and losers of the budget, which is... We don't know yet.
So, you know, like parents have to decide how they're going to distribute their Christmas spending across many children. This is exactly what's going on with the budget, because there is much squabbling about the budget, because they've already just revealed there's only a £22 billion hole anyway. Apparently there's a £9 billion hole in the NHS.
They're discovering a lot of holes.
Yeah, well, I know, exactly. And there's now a big squabble about who gets the most. Ed Miliband, Energy Secretary, has got a big chunk of it. He's been given £22 billion for this carbon capture project. But Phillipson, the Education Secretary, wants a big chunk to cover teacher pay. Wes Street, in Health Secretary, he says he's got a 10-year plan, but obviously they've got a £9 billion hole that I've just said. And there's a big push-pull about who gets what within the budget, and they've all been privately petitioning the Prime Minister and Rachel Reeves independently, but they've all been told the budget has been decided, and that's that.
Yeah, well, you know, we all know it's going to be a really, really horrible budget, and it's going to be a horrible budget for all of us, and it's going to be a pretty tough budget for the shadow cabinet trying to sort out their things. And, I mean, this has always gone on, that people have been saying, oh, no, but not me, but I have this and I have this. And I remember years and years ago when John Major was standing to be leader of the party, which he won, standing to be Prime Minister, and there was a wonderful clip of him being because at that time he was secretary.
He was
to the secretary. No, this was before he was. So he was, and he was the man who, which is what Darren Jones now has to do. If you're financial secretary to the Treasury, you have to go round all the department people going, no, we're not going to give you. No, in fact, not only we're not going to give you any money, we want you to make cuts. And that's what's been going on. And obviously nobody's happy.
No, the problem with it all, though, is the hypocrisy of it, isn't it? That's what people know it's going to be hard, and there can be an acceptance of that if there's an honesty. I mean, the problem is it's like with the tax thresholds thing, which are going to be, apparently the freeze is going to be extended.
Yeah.
Well, except 12 months ago, Rachel Reeves said freezing tax thresholds was a stealth tax on working people. And now they say, well, no, it's all just got to be done and we're not taxing working people. So it's that. It doesn't make any sense.
But she didn't know about the black hole then, did she?
I know,
well, but she should have done.
I always thought that the thresholds would stay, actually. I mean, that it was pretty obvious.
Yeah, but is there a lack of honesty?
No, I think I think there's that you have to interrogate them a lot, and so the whole thing about you know, the working people thing is, I mean, it's quite a difficult one, actually.
Do you think that they are, this government now they're in power, probably weren't prepared for just how difficult it is to make the books balance?
I think nobody. I mean, I think one of the problems was, and you saw it for the last year. There was a sort of burnt earth policy. I mean, the Conservatives knew they were going to lose, and so they didn't leave anything that was going to be good. And it is tough. And the point is that the NHS is obvious, education is obvious, but then look at our court system.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. I mean,
and the prison system,
the prisons we sort of know about, but the court, you can wait 3 years to be, you know, and sometimes in custody and so. I mean, so you look at it everywhere.
Says we're going to fix these things, but we're going to have to make difficult decisions in order to fix them. Do you think he really thinks actually they're unfixable? It's unfixable.
Well, I think he thinks they're unfixable in the short term.
But he knew it. He must have known a lot of these things were in perilous situations before he came in. I feel like the Labour government must have known how bad, if not quite how bad, but it was really, really bad. And they're boxed in now by their own pre-election promises. And they're now in a position where we're not going to cut this, we're not going to cut this, we're not going to cut this, we're going to have to cut. And then they're going to have to cut it anyway.
Everything, yeah.
Right, let's move on to the Sunday Times. We've eaten loads of time with that. Scarlett, it's HS2.
God, this is just terrible.
Well, it is, but this is what
This is another black hole.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's a black hole. So ministers are going to have greater control over the HS2 company, are they? But they're also looking at extending it, but not to what it should be. It's all very confusing. HS2 is very confusing.
I've been confused about HS2. One of the things, can I say, HS2 began in the wrong place.
Yes, it
HS2
did.
should have begun in the north
and
done the Leeds to Birmingham. And then, actually, I'm not sure we really need the Birmingham to London, whereas the north really needed. And instead,
it's relieving freight, isn't it, Birmingham to London, as much as commuters. But you're quite right. The absence of successful railways, high speed in the north is appalling.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the absence of any decent working railway, and all the problems have been in the south. So in the Chilterns and the Cotswolds and all the places it was going to go through in the south have cost a fortune, have made people really cross. They were going to knock down a beautiful bit of London, Primrose Hill, to put it through. I mean, why? Oh, didn't you know about that?
No,
to get it through to Euston. And then they go, oh, no, well, HS2, it's going to run from not the Snow Hill, which is actually a rather lovely station in Birmingham, but not the main one, to something oak,
yes.
which is way out of... I mean, it was all mad.
Yeah.
And now they say they're not sure whether the overspend is 10 billion or 20 billion.
How can they not be sure?
Well, this is what Andy says.
We're not talking about how much it will cost in the future, because obviously the future is hard to predict. They're saying that they don't currently know now. They know that they've got an overspend now, but they don't know whether it's 10 billion or 20 billion. In an era of digital transactions and AI, where everything is immediately pulled, how can you be that far over?
I don't know.
I don't understand.
No.
How can you not know what
type
you've
on their
spent?
laptop and
Yeah,
say,
how can you not know what you've spent?
Yes, the HS2 company, whatever it's called, should be able to say,
Yes,
this is
there
where
must be a head of
we are
finance in that
at.
company,
Yeah.
mustn't
And
there?
we're just talking about the overspend as well, not the actual finished sums of money. I mean, the overspend from London to West Midlands was going to be a 30 billion overspend. It's now 60 billion overspend.
Yeah, something is very, very wrong with
And it's been very wrong from the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing was madness, actually.
Well, there you are, another unfixable problem.
Yeah, right, you two. Thank you very much indeed. We shall have another section a little bit later on. Here's your weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Ashley will bring strong winds and heavy rain to much of the UK today, with amber and yellow weather warnings in force. The area of rain that we can see out there at the moment continues to push its way eastwards through this morning, but it's in western parts of Scotland that we'll see those strongest winds today. Gusts of 70 to 80 miles an hour are possible, but even along Irish Sea coastal regions, we could still see those gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour. As that rain band pushes its way eastwards, it will turn a little drier across much of England and Wales, and temperatures still above average for the time of year, though definitely feeling cooler than we saw yesterday. As we then go into this evening, we start to see a further area of rain moving in from the northwest as we go through Sunday evening. This affecting parts of Northern Ireland and particularly parts of Scotland, where we could see some heavy downpours over the high ground. Turning a little more showery as we go further east, but those outbreaks of rain do continue across parts of Northern Ireland through the evening, so perhaps leading some localised flooding in places. For much of England and Wales, though, it will be a mostly dry end to the day on Sunday. Perhaps still a little cloud and rain just lingering in the very far southeast for a time, but that clearing its way eastwards as we go into the early hours of Monday morning. Still remaining very wet and blustery across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and the winds gradually easing as we go through the early hours of Monday, but still remaining very windy to start the day. It will be quite a mild start to the day on Monday as well. Temperatures generally remaining in the double figures for most places, particularly where that cloud persists overnight, and still remaining very blustery to start on Monday. But those winds will gradually start to ease as we go through the day, though the showers still pushing in from the west, spreading their way eastwards through the morning. A little cloudier across the very far south of England. Got this next area of rain just skirting along the very far southeast coast as we go through the afternoon. So a bit of a damp end to the day here and plenty of showers elsewhere, with temperatures a little closer to average for the time of year, 15 or 16 in the south and around 12 or 13 further north.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. The government's crackdown on benefit fraud.
Yes, those who cheat the system could have their bank accounts raided by Number 10 in a bid to clamp down on welfare fraud.
Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall says it's absurd the current measures have become so outdated.
Meanwhile, the Health Secretary is set to hand out smart medical tech to monitor serious health conditions as part of a 10-year plan to save the NHS.
The King and Queen attend a church service in Sydney as they embark on their tour of Australia.
And the 6-time Olympic cycling champion Sir Chris Hoy has announced that he has terminal cancer and just has 2 to 4 years to live.
Also for you this morning, has Keir Starmer gone too far? That's because a portrait of William Shakespeare is the latest great national figure to be taken down at number 10.
The UK is braced for destructive weather as a danger to life warning is issued by the Met Office.
Storm Ashley will bring some strong winds and heavy rain for much of the UK today with weather warnings in force. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
And turning to today's sport, in football, ill-discipline costs Arsenal as they lose to Bournemouth. And it's all over in the sailing as New Zealand beat Britain in the America's Cup.
It's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast. Interesting, this idea that the government will be able to look at your bank accounts and take money out if they feel that that you have cheated the system. An email here from John says, Stephen and Anne, about benefit fraud, we had a threatening letter this week from HMRC demanding £51 to be paid within 7 days. So I rung them up and after talking through, they ended up owing us £400. So they can get things wrong. And when they threaten you to pay money within 7 days that you haven't got, that's OK for them to cause you stress. What about my human rights? So, I mean, making the point that, yes, things can be wrong. Unbelievably.
This is the issue. Well, we get it all the time. I mean, even the fact that, how many times do you get a nice cheque in the post from HMRC saying, oh, you've overpaid on your tax. I mean, it's never very much money. But nevertheless, I've had 1 or 2 over the years. But it's always about 2 years after you've paid it. Takes forever to get back, and it just means a mistake has been made somewhere along the line. Anyway,
the idea of them making a mistake and being able to reach into your bank account, take money out, don't know whether anyone's going to like that idea.
No, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, those cheating the benefit system could, as we're saying, have their bank accounts raided by the Department for Work and Pensions if all this goes through.
Yeah, it's actually just part of new measures in a crackdown on welfare fraud, which I suppose most of us would welcome. It would also see things happening like private companies being forced, like airlines, for instance, being forced to pass information to their investigators.
Why airlines, I wonder?
Yeah, I don't know why they quote airlines.
No, that's a bit odd, isn't it? Anyway, some people criticising this for being too intrusive. Liz Kendall, who is now the Work and Pension Secretary, says it's absurd that the current measures measures that we have in place are so outdated.
Well, with us in the studio, Deputy Political Editor of the Mail on Sunday, Anna Mikhailova. We're getting a lot of emails about this already from people watching this morning, who's sort of saying this is Big Brother-ish.
Well, I think that email specifically about the HMRC example is absolutely classic, and we all know mistakes that are made, and the idea of giving the government the power to just reach in and take whatever they want and not be accountable for that is pretty scary. So I think there are two things here. I mean, yes, there is an absolute problem with benefit fraud. The government's own figures are that it's costing us $7 billion a year.
I mean, that cannot be allowed to continue.
Exactly. It's gone up since COVID as well. Fraudsters are getting much more sophisticated. I think all fraud has become enabled by technology, by AI as well, increasingly. So they do need to keep up. And Liz Kendall is making the point, a very valid one, that she's come into this department and realises that everything's still done on paper, pretty much. Demands for money are sent out by paper and they are just too slow. They effectively have to take people to court, by which time sometimes they won't even be in the country anymore. And so they give a case of one Bulgarian fraudster who ran this racket and stole $2 million over 4 years by flying people in from Bulgaria, taking them to the job centre, posing as benefit claims successfully, and then flying them home again, which is, I think, that answers the question of airlines to me.
Yeah.
But I read that and I just thought, where's the police in all this? Why is the default to suddenly give the DWP officials the power to take your bank account? But why isn't the police getting involved with the people like that?
But also, why is the job centre or benefits office or whatever handing out so much money?
That's it. Why not stop it at source?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this seems a little bit like a very eye-catching measure. The context of it is Liz Kendall is one of the cabinet ministers who's really, really scrambling to protect her budget ahead of a very harsh spending review by Rachel Reeves. And all these departments have been told, the ones who aren't protected like the NHS, they've been told to go out and really find savings anywhere they can. So this to me looks like a clever idea, but one that perhaps needs a little finesse.
There needs some... I mean, there's got to be caveats in there to protect people.
So many, I would have thought, that it might be unworkable. Glenn's been in touch. Morning, Glenn says, trust me, having worked in the DWP, they have neither the foresight, determination or ability to dip into private individuals' bank accounts. This is merely a headline gimmick.
Yeah, well, and also, don't forget that it's not just going to be DWP, is it?
No.
If you start to give DWP that power for benefit fraud, you will end up with that HMRC demand, not a letter that you can call up and sensibly talk them down. It'll be, oh gosh, I'm £60 poorer this month and I haven't been able to pay my energy bill because they've just come in and taken this money.
Well, we saw what happened with the post office scandal. There with the post office, they had the ability, which none of us could understand at the time, they had the ability to actually take people to court themselves and not even wait for people to be found guilty. They are the people who found the postmasters guilty and then suspended them and robbed them of their livelihood and so much money. And that's the wrong people to be in charge of that sort of responsibility, isn't it?
Exactly. And the post office just shows that how long it can take to actually bring people to justice. We still haven't had those people brought to justice.
Yes.
So
once they take your money... Even if they're wrong, you won't get it back.
Exactly.
In terms of the big black hole, which is obviously what this is about, and whether you believe that it was always there or whether it's new or whether Labour knew about it months ago or all the rest of it... we were talking HS2 in the papers. Now, it's difficult. I wouldn't know whether... I do not know whether HS2 should go on, should be extended, I couldn't work it out. However, if it was scrapped now, and there's talk about, a £30 billion overspend on one section coming up, why don't they just stop it and save the money for now? At least postpone it.
I think the reason they've given in the past is it would cost more to stop it than continue it. But
How can that be?
Well, exactly. The problem with it is every time they budget, they go over and over and over budget. But talk about where they need to be clawing money back. The amount those HS2 executives are paid is eye-watering. It's hundreds and hundreds and thousands of pounds. And it is just a scandal that doesn't get nearly enough coverage. So that's where they need to be looking for their savings.
I suppose they'd probably have to go on spending anyway because there are contracts involved.
There are contracts, exactly, there are commitments. Don't forget they've already relocated loads of people.
Yeah.
They've bought up their houses and made the move, which is at great cost to those people. So it's a tricky one. Also, why can't we just update our infrastructure?
What's there already, just update it. Yeah. Why build it totally? Nobody can understand the HS2 saga, can
Just
they?
know that the North is desperate for some improvement, but it's just the fact that with this ridiculous leg from somewhere outside of London to Birmingham and nothing else in between, and it's still costing us hundreds upon hundreds of billions of pounds.
And nothing up north where it's needed the most.
No.
I mean, as Scarlett said, they started it in the wrong place, didn't they? So I imagine Keir Starmer's saying, well, they've got the problem to solve. And again, it's one of those unsolvable problems because it was started by somebody else and messed up.
Yeah, but that, leadership isn't about saying, oh, it's someone else's problem. It's actually being able to grip it. So that's what they need to do. They need to grip it. They need to sack all the terrible executives that have caused this problem in the first place. They need to have some accountability in place. And they need to...
And if they did that, wouldn't we feel better about the budget if it's going to be as hard as they're predicting? If we could actually see somebody being held account for some of these bad mistakes that have already been made. But no, the fat cats just go on getting fatter, don't they?
Exactly, and then pensioners are losing their winter fuel allowance, yeah.
The problem with HS2 is, if a decision was, if it was gripped, 50% of the population won't be happy. Because, people up north want it, they want the whole lot in there. It was very, very unpopular when it was cancelled or halved. And then everybody else doesn't want it there at all. So you're never going to win. It's going to be an unpopular decision, whatever you do.
I don't think that's the right way to look at it. I think because the idea is such a big investment like that will boost the economy if done properly. Therefore, just because you're not in the area where you're getting that train link, it doesn't mean you're not going to see a benefit because, in theory, it should all drive investment, boost business, boost productivity. So it would be a win-win for everyone, and that's how it should be sold by those politicians. But no one likes just to see waste, 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 which is what we've seen.
OK. Anne, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed.
It really gets steam coming out of your ears, doesn't it, the HS2 saga particularly?
Yeah.
But anyway, let us know how you feel about it.
If it was down to me, I do not know at this stage whether I would say, yes, let's get it all built properly, or whether I'd scrap it. I just don't know.
No,
you
wouldn't start from here.
But I wouldn't start from here.
That's the problem.
And then make a decision to stop it at Birmingham. Because what's the point? Anyway,
let's move on. Yeah,
let's
let's move on. 1,000 miles away, in fact, further than that. Yeah, far further than that, to the King and Queen, because they've begun their landmark tour of Australia by joining a church congregation for Sunday service.
Now, there was a small protest, but royal fans far outnumbered that. The King and Queen arrived in Sydney on Friday for a 6-day visit to the nation to celebrate its people, its culture and its heritage.
Well, our royal correspondent Cameron Walker has the latest from Sydney.
Welcome home, Your Majesties. Just, I think, sums up the mood here in northern Sydney this morning. The King and Queen attended a church service at St Thomas's Church in northern Sydney, meeting the local congregation, but also, of course, meeting the crowds. Over 1,000 people estimated to have been here, braving the heat. Of course, it's summer here in Australia, in order to try and catch a glimpse or even meet Their Majesties, the King and Queen, and several were lucky enough to do so. It's clearly a very packed schedule. The King will be off to the New South Wales Parliament, where he'll be attending a reception celebrating the bicentenary of the Legislative Council here in New South Wales. He also has 2 private audiences with the Governor-General of Australia and the Governor of New South Wales, Margaret Beazley, as well. I spoke to some members of the crowd, and here is what they said.
We're very excited for the King and Queen to come.
Very excited.
Let's go.
We basically missed our own service to come and get a glimpse of him, so yeah, it was very exciting.
Seen him as Prince before, first time as King.
I remember him as a young boy at school in Victoria.
I was around when his mother made the first trip to Australia in 1954. I was a little girl at school.
He's done pretty well at age 75 to come all this way.
They represent so much good in the world.
I'm a big supporter of the royal. I born in Nepal, live in Australia.
Now, the noise from the crowd was electric when the King and Queen were doing their walkabout, and it certainly drowned out the noise of a small number of protesters which were also here outside the church to, let's say, greet their majesties. I'm not sure they would see it that way.
I want to say to King Charles, give my land back. This land was colonised. This land was taken by force of brutality through massacres of First Nations people.
Always was, always will be!
The King is clearly very mindful of the fact that he's been diagnosed with cancer, and his schedule has been designed in such a way to allow him time to rest. That's why there was no engagements carried out yesterday. The engagements kind of stop mid-afternoon today, and then tomorrow he'll be flying on to Canberra with Her Majesty the Queen for several other engagements.
Fantastic. It's good to see him out there, and it's good to see there is a lot of support.
Yes, it is.
Which is nice. It's 15 minutes past 7, very nearly. Let's have a look at some of the other key stories this morning.
Well, Sir Chris Hoy, one of Britain's greatest cyclists and Olympians, has announced that his cancer is terminal, and apparently he says he's been given just 2 to 4 years to live. Back in February, he said he felt forced to reveal his cancer diagnosis publicly when he was undergoing treatment. He is the 3rd most decorated British Olympian of all time, with 6 golds and 1 silver medal.
Zayn Malik has announced he's going to reschedule his US tour after the death of One Direction bandmate Liam Payne. That's as Liam's father paid tribute to his son outside the hotel in Argentina where he died. Meanwhile, officials confirmed a search of the hotel found narcotics, alcohol and destroyed objects in the room.
Benjamin Netanyahu has promised to punish Iran after Hezbollah launched a drone at his residence yesterday morning. Both Netanyahu and his wife were not in when it struck. According to reports, the drone strike caused little damage to their home.
The weather is a big story today because Storm Ashley is, well, more than on the way. I think she's made landfall at various points, and particularly in the north, it's going to be problematic. So let's get all the details with Ellie.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Ashley will bring strong winds and heavy rain to much of the UK today, with amber and yellow weather warnings in force. The area of rain that we can see out there at the moment continues to push its way eastwards through this morning, but it's in western parts of Scotland that we'll see those strongest winds today. Gusts of 70 to 80 miles an hour are possible, but even along Irish Sea coastal regions, we could still see those gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour. As that rain band pushes its way eastwards, it will turn a little drier across much of England and Wales, and temperatures still above average for the time of year, though definitely feeling cooler than we saw yesterday. As we then go into this evening, we start to see a further area of rain moving in from the northwest as we go through Sunday evening. This affecting parts of Northern Ireland and particularly parts of Scotland, where we could see some heavy downpours over the high ground. Turning a little more showery as we go further east, but those outbreaks of rain do continue across parts of Northern Ireland through the evening, so perhaps leading some localised flooding in places. For much of England and Wales, though, it will be a mostly dry end to the day on Sunday. Perhaps still a little cloud and rain just lingering in the very far southeast for a time, but that clearing its way eastwards as we go into the early hours of Monday morning. Still remaining very wet and blustery across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and the winds gradually easing as we go through the early hours of Monday, but still remaining very windy to start the day. It will be quite a mild start to the day on Monday as well. Temperatures generally remaining in the double figures for most places, particularly where that cloud persists overnight, and still remaining very blustery to start on Monday. But those winds will gradually start to ease as we go through the day, though the showers still pushing in from the west, spreading their way eastwards through the morning. A little cloudier across the very far south of England. We've got this next area of rain just skirting along the very far southeast coast as we go through the afternoon. So a bit of a damp end to the day here and plenty of showers elsewhere, with temperatures a little closer to average for the time of year, 15 or 16 in the south and around 12 or 13 further north.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for the Great British Giveaway now. And the clock is ticking, so get your entry in because the lines close on Friday.
It's your chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash. And here's how. Yeah, best of luck to you on that one. Still to come, what should we do about the two-child benefit cap? Should it stay or should it go? We'll debate that next.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, a leading think tank has claimed the government have ignored the wider benefits of scrapping the two-child benefit cap.
Yes, this comes as Keir Starmer faced pressure to remove the controversial policy, with the Prime Minister insisting he failed to do so because of the current economic climate.
So, should the government now scrap this policy?
Well, we're joined now by parenting and lifestyle journalist Annette Keller. Good morning, Annette. It's odd, this one, isn't it? Because this country needs more children. And if there's any evidence that the two-child cap is actually stopping people having bigger families, that's a bad thing, isn't it?
Well, you could say that. And I think as well, you have to look at this as a whole spectrum. I don't think the underpopulation is exactly a two-child benefit cap issue. I think we're looking at things like housing, wages haven't risen with inflation, people are having difficulties with mortgages, the NHS is on its knees. I think there's a whole psychosocial problem going on of why people are not having children. And is it so terrible to say, and is it a sin to say, we have to take our own responsibility for family planning? Now, when they brought it in 2017, prior to that, it was costing $1 billion a year. So they decided to try and introduce and curb a little bit of family planning. Many people would love to have loads of children, but they simply can't afford to.
There is an argument to say, though, isn't there, that if you scrap the policy, then whether or not there will be major economic benefits to the country, it's debatable. However, the policy itself leads to more children living in poverty, and that would reduce that number.
Well, I think there is also the other aspect of it. Whilst you can say there are children in poverty, but there is also some help out there for people that have 3 children or more. For example, there's a household support fund, which is £500 a year. There's free uniform grants. There's free holiday clubs and 85% of childcare as well. Also, a lot of people are able to access rent with housing benefit as well, and benefits have risen by 6.7% this year. I wouldn't say it's all doom or gloom. And what about people that would love to have loads of children but said, you know what, I can't afford them, so they're not?
And also, though, I just wonder if you feel that paying child benefit at all, and certainly calling it that, is a very old-fashioned concept. And there are a lot of people who don't have children. They may want them, but they don't have them. Or they're single, or they're gay, and they, again, take the decision not to have a family, even though they could nowadays. And they feel that they're sort of being, they're not being treated as well as heterosexual couples who want children. It's just not very fair to pay anyone a benefit just because they've got a child, is it?
Well, I think the introduction of, I think it's 20-something pounds a week, I think that can help families, as particularly with, the cost of living crisis and food and things like that. But I think what it happens is there's the add-ons with universal credit where they get extras. And the other part of that is, I think that people are seeing that as not fair, as in, when's it going to stop? Is it okay to say have 4 children, 5 children, 6 children? And I think people have a bee in their bonnet about that, if I'm being frank with you. And the other part of it is as well, out of the 400,000 people that are affected by the 2-child benefit cap, 40% of them are single parents. And for me, personally, I would say, why are they not getting the help from the father if they do want to work or get back out there? Because that seems to be a huge issue as well.
OK. Annette, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you.
I'm sure you've got a view on that. gbnews.com/yoursay. There is a big push within the Labour Party, within the government, to get it back. They're sticking to the guns on it at the moment. But I don't know, is Annette right? Does it focus people's minds on saying, as a lot of people already do, can we afford to have more children?
We need more children, though, don't we?
Well,
in the way society works, we need more people in the next layers of generations.
Yes, but that doesn't mean just shilling them out, does it?
No, it doesn't.
It's if you can still, you need to be able to afford to have them.
But nobody takes the decision to have child number 3 because they can get more, another child benefit.
Oh, no. But is there an argument to say some people just aren't thinking of the financial consequences of having a child?
Oh, I think that must be true, yes. But then should they be castigated for that? The instinct to want to have a child doesn't become... Maybe you're arguing it should, and perhaps it definitely should be taken into account, but it doesn't come down to money. Well, it does once the child is born, because children are expensive, but you don't take that decision on a financial basis, I don't think, at all. No,
I just wonder if some people should a bit more. Is that the wrong thing to say to someone who doesn't have children? I don't know, it just annoys me slightly.
Well, I was just going to ask you how you feel about the fact that I had child benefit for my first 2 children. Does that annoy you?
No. No, I mean, I don't think a child benefit has never annoyed me. I think but I think capping it at 2 seems quite sensible. I mean, most people the vast majority of people have 2 children, don't they?
Yeah,
and therefore,
2.4, they always say.
Yeah. But so if you decide to have more children than that, well, all well and good. Best of luck to you.
But the cost of childcare will never be covered by child benefit, for instance, will it?
No, not at £20 a week, whatever it is. But should you just be able to have them ad infinitum and claim the same benefits?
So you're not against the concept of child benefit?
No, not at all.
But you think more than 2 children, it's just one too many.
Well, not even too many, but it's like, at what point do we stop paying for it? In that sense, I don't know. I think a 2-child cap is
reasonable. What do you think? Please let us know.
Do.
Love to talk to you about it.
Right, we're going to have a look at the sport for you with Mark in just a minute.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date.
Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Yeah, these are the latest figures.
Yeah.
Because someone, was it Jeff, I think, messaged and said, how can you say most families have 2 children? Actually, it's less
the statistic always used to be 2.4 children.
Yeah, well, anyway, it's gone down. This is why there's this crisis with kids. The average UK family now has 1.7 children.
Oh.
1.4 parents.
Oh.
And half a dog.
I've got half a dog, to be fair.
Oh, she's only a little
She's so tiny, yeah.
Well, there you go. 1.4 parents worries me.
Well, that's depressing. But, I mean, this is averaging, obviously.
Well, yes.
So it's 1.7 children, is it?
Yeah. 1.7.
That is significantly lower, isn't it, than it used to be in the olden days?
Yeah, it is.
2.4 children was the average.
Yeah. So there you go. So they're the
families are changing, aren't they?
Right, let's have a look at the sport. Mark Foster is here. Good morning.
Good morning.
And this really sad news about Chris Hoy.
Yeah, really, really sad. I'm diagnosed with cancer, terminal cancer. I think about a year ago or so he knew about it, but obviously found out more information, obviously trying to come to terms with it. I think his outlook's the most positive thing that I think I've read, which he sort of said it's unnatural, but it's nature. And he's sort of looking at the positive side of things and putting a positive slant on it. But yeah, how it came around, I mean, I guess any athlete or any person, we all have aches and pains. He had a problem with his shoulder, presumably in his mind thinking, well, it's obviously just down from being in the gym and I've just strained something. Went and got checked out and he found from there that he had cancer in his pelvis, hips, ribs, spine, and it was prostate cancer.
Goodness, you wouldn't... I mean, that must have been such a shock at the time, because a pain in the shoulder, especially for somebody like him, you would think that would just be a physical thing that is, as you say, because he's
Go and see a physio, have a massage, and it'll be OK. I'll be out for a week and I'll be back on it.
And to suddenly find that it's not as if that was the first cancer in his body. Led them, obviously, the doctors investigated and found that he had multiple tumours in many parts of the body. And that's why, sadly, it's been diagnosed as terminal.
And you look at someone that's so incredibly, you know, well, it was won 6 Olympic titles, 11 world titles. You think of someone that's so fit. He's a man mountain, legs like tree trunks. It just shows it can happen to anybody.
Cancer has no respect for particularly fit people or anything, does it?
And
it'll strike anywhere and anyone.
He's written a book which is coming out next month called My Toughest Race Yet. And he's obviously had a lot of tough races. But he says this is bigger than the Olympics. It's bigger than anything. This is about appreciating life and finding joy.
Well, let's hope he can spend the next 2 to 4 years actually just living every day.
Yes, exactly.
And making the most.
And it's very tough on the family because his wife suffers from multiple sclerosis. So those 2 children have had to face up to the worst news you'd ever want to hear from your parents, about your parents. And I think they're still pretty young. So.
They'll be 10 and 7. Which is, I mean, it's very young, isn't it?
Yeah, well, he said he had to sit them down and explain that everybody dies of something. But you don't want to hear that, do you, when you're a kid? No.
You don't. It's really sad. Right, let's have a look at football, should we?
Should we?
Well, yes. Not if you're an Arsenal fan this morning.
No, but if you're a Bournemouth fan...
Bournemouth fan?
Yeah.
Good news.
What a great news.
Absolutely. In fact, one of our viewers got in touch and said, "Don't stop talking about Arsenal. Talk about how wonderful Bournemouth did."
They did do amazing. They won 2-0 yesterday against Arsenal. Arsenal obviously been tipped as one of the title contenders. Man City, Liverpool looking really good at the moment as well. But had another man sent off yesterday. Saliba went in the 30th minute. That is their 3rd red card in 8 games. You know, 3 out of 8 games to have a red card. They drew the other 2. They lost this one. That's 7 points thrown away in 3 games. And we talk about tiny margins in sport, and that could be the tiny margin. So, you know, they're sort of making silly, naive mistakes. That's Rice's words. He was sent off, obviously, for kicking a ball away earlier in the season. But yes, as you say, Arsenal's loss is Bournemouth's gain, and what a great victory for them. Man United got back on track. Ten Hag's Man United got back on track.
Yes.
2-1 against Brentford.
2-1 against Brentford, after being 1-0 down. So they had a good result. And at Spurs, they won 4-1 after being 1-0 down, and Kudos got sent off for West Ham in that game.
It's quite a good result, isn't it? 4-1.
Villa came...
If you're a Spurs.
If you're a Spurs fan, exactly. And we love a bit of Ange. Well, I'm a Spurs fan anyway. Villa continue their good form under Emery.
Yes, they did very well, didn't they? Prince William were very pleased about that.
He will be. They won 3-1 away at Fulham, and there was 2 sent off in that game. Yesterday was a game of sort of a day of sendings off, so to speak. One from each team went yesterday on that one.
I tell you what is quite depressing in terms of the sport is the America's Cup. I mean, it was looking that way, but New Zealand have won. I mean, first time we've been in it in 60-odd years. we've never, ever won it.
Ben Ainsley, famously, who actually then was for Team Oracle USA, they were 8-1 down, and he came back and won 9-8. So we were saying yesterday it's a foregone conclusion. It just shows you something.
That shows you how you can turn things around. No, absolutely.
Heck. I don't know. I am quite gutted about that, though.
Did you know? Which obviously I didn't know, because obviously I've not really got into the America's Cup because we've never been in it.
No, there's never been any reason to get that interested.
Do you know how long the course is?
No.
No, I didn't know this. 3 kilometres.
Is that all it is?
I know. I was thinking it would be like a long boat race, but 3 kilometres.
Oh.
And each race is won by sort of 41 seconds, 27 seconds, 23 seconds, 7 seconds. Right. And obviously 1 minute 20 is a country mile over that distance. So, yeah, 3 kilometres.
I thought it was a really long thing.
Yes, I did.
Well, there you are. We didn't know.
There you go. Well, I suppose they get through a lot of races quite quickly, but 3 kilometres is not a lot.
It's nothing. At the speed they go.
No. Anyway, never mind. There's always next time.
That's right. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you, Mark. We'll see you a little bit later on. We've got the papers with Scarlett and Andy in just a moment.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We are now delighted to be joined by comedian and my beautiful friend, Francine Lewis, who's here to share with us her upcoming book, The Last Laugh, and an exciting competition in collaboration with none other than that mean Simon Cowell. Francine,
he's not so mean anymore.
Oh, is he not?
He's not. And do you know what?
He's having a child, is it maybe?
Definitely. It's really weird because I really liked Simon. He was nasty. I just found that, I don't know, quite sexy. Now he's way too nice. Way too nice.
That's what they say, isn't it? You get all the nice guys say, I never get any luck with women, and they always say I'm too nice.
Do you know what? The truth is, I've always thought Simon was lovely. He's such a nice guy. Like, when I was doing Britain's Got Talent, I was very, very excited, you know, to meet Simon again, because it was the second time I'd actually met him. And I always thought he was such a charming, lovely man.
Of course, you are more recently well known for BGT and your impressions and whatnot.
Do you know what? I do watch a lot of reality TV, a lot of that sort of stuff.
What do you watch?
I love Towie. Whenever it's Love Island's on. Seriously, honey, it's 100% definitely. You got to watch Essie. It's all about Towie. Love it, seriously. So I'm always doing, you know, whatever the new reality shows are.
The favourite is Katie Price, and we've got a video. I think we've got a selfie video of us doing.
Have we?
Yeah, we have. From
I'm showing years ago. Tatiana to Katie Price, which she does amazingly. Come on, Tatiana, let's...
No, I don't.
Tatiana!
There's a mixture between Katie Price and Tatiana.
What do you think? I love when people take me off. It shows what a big star I am.
It's the lick of the lip.
The People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Let's see what's making the news for you at 7:43 with the writer and journalist Andy Jones and former Labour advisor, I think probably current Labour advisor, Charlotte. I should think so.
Own up to it.
Let's start with the Sunday Times, should we? And the King putting his money where his mouth is.
Yes, the King has made a significant personal donation to tackle climate change and equality in the Commonwealth. He's obviously in Australia as we speak. We just had a live report from GB News there talking to people about how very upset that they are with him. But he's given a significant personal donation. Doesn't say quite how large. This is particularly to avoid climate change or the challenges of the changing climate in some of the Pacific Islands and areas around there. It doesn't say how large it is. A significant donation for me might be £100, but I dare say His Highness...
I would have thought it would be more.
Significantly larger than that. There's some quite amusing and heartwarming details that have come out from this trip in the Sunday Times. First of all, New South Wales Governor Chris Minns, who says that he's a staunch Republican, he says he's still honoured to have the King there. He's going to be on best behaviour.
Yeah.
He's honoured. He's going to treat him as a great guest, and he's going to roll out the red carpet as you absolutely should.
Well, the Prime Minister's a Republican, isn't he, Anthony Albanese?
Quite, absolutely. And I think that this is the right way to be. I think we see all these protests there, and I value and support polite protest, I would call it. But this position, every time that anyone goes to a new country, it's like throw the eggs out, get the banners out, abuse them and all this sort of stuff. Another amusing detail was they're supposed to go to Royal Randwick Racecourse. Apparently they're not going to go there. They obviously love a day at the races, the royal family. But they prepared, especially knowing that King Charles likes an avocado, and they a collection of what colour avocado we wanted. They got hard ones, soft ones, slightly brown ones, yellow ones, just in case. I thought that was quite nice.
It's a bit like his eggs.
Yes.
He likes a lot of eggs in the morning to choose which egg I'm going to have this morning. Yeah. They make lots of boiled eggs between sort of 3.5 minutes and 4.5 minutes, and then they open them and then he chooses.
Oh. That seems a bit wasteful, doesn't it?
Yes.
Well, no, I'm sure that other people in the household will polish off the eggs.
Would not mind the cold eggs that he's turned down.
I thought they'd have known exactly how long to do the egg by now.
Well, maybe he changes his mind every morning about...
But I think Australia will be very proud to show off their variety of avocados.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Scarlett, in The Observer, the Children's Commissioner says smacking of children must be stopped now.
Well, what she says is... so it's already banned in Wales and Scotland, and what she says is there's this horrible, horrible case of Sarah Sharif, who was killed by her father, and he said, I was legally punishing her. And what...
Not if it leads to death.
No, and not with a cricket bat, frankly.
The court case is ongoing, isn't it? And but they, she had a bone broken in her neck, appalling injuries. They found evidence of her DNA and all sorts of household implements. It's going more than...
Yeah, and it was him saying legal. And actually, the thing about smacking children is you do need to find another way of doing it. I remember when my daughter was very small, about 2, and she did, obviously, the most forbidden thing in my house was she ripped the cover of her book, and her dad said, stop it. And so she ripped it again, because she's that sort of person. So he took her and he really tapped her. So she took her hand to me and she went, Dada, Dada! And she went back and just smacked him round the face.
Wow.
And she was never hit again, I can tell you. It didn't do any good whatsoever.
Well, I think I was smacked, but not...
Yeah,
But I'll tell you what my mother used to do, is she'd put her hand on top of mine and basically smack her own hand.
I see what you mean, yeah.
But it was the shock of it.
Yeah.
You realise as a child, it was the shock. You thought you'd been smacked, even though you hadn't.
But also putting in the recent Sarah Sharif case, it was a child that was literally,
beaten to death.
As part of this debate around smacking, it's completely emotive nonsense.
I'm not sure it is.
But hang on a minute.
No, I'm not sure it is, because
we're talking
it just shows how some people think of one thing as a smack, and other people think a smack is a wallop.
In that case. But we're in this position where we're taking an appalling case where a child was effectively murdered and saying this is why we shouldn't smack kids. We're in a position now, and a lot of parents are desperate in a way, because you've got children who are completely obsessed with devices. They're staring at screens. It's impossible to get their attention. We're in a situation where child murders are going absolutely through the roof. We've seen appalling cases where children are murdering other children, children are murdering other adults, and it is very, very difficult to discipline children in a way.
Very rare, and it's not about.
We've had dozens of cases.
It's not dozens.
No, isn't it about whether we as a society approve of physically reprimanding a child?
Yes.
And I would have thought in 2024 we ought to be good enough parents to be able to think of something else.
And can I say...
I'm talking about a light tap.
No, I talk of somebody who's slapped my son in a supermarket, right? I am, to put it, not a perfect parent, but I think that I was wrong.
Oh, I don't know. There's got to be a threat of something. The threat with me was always, I shall smack your legs in
public.
Smack on the leg, a smack on the leg,
that
or a
stops
tap.
you.
I don't.
Anyway,
see
in that Sarah Sheriff case, of course, that case is ongoing, and the people who've been charged deny the charges against them.
The ultimate threat now to use against your child is if you do that again, I'm going to withdraw your screen time.
Yes.
That apparently is very, very effective.
Precisely.
Andy, Mail on Sunday says Nigel Farage is lining up a high-profile candidate to stand in a by-election which isn't happening.
Yes, so we had the King making a significant personal donation earlier, and we've got absolutely no idea what figure that is. And we've got Nigel Farage lining up a high-profile candidate, who we don't know who it is, to stand in a by-election which may or may not happen in Richmond.
Well, if you believe Rishi Sunak, he said he was going to continue. This is in Rishi Sunak's seat. Should he stand down after the next leader of the opposition is chosen, which he said at the time when he lost the election, he said he will stay for the Parliament.
Yes.
Therefore, this by-election isn't happening.
Yes. So I'm in absolute agreement with you. It feels like Nigel Farage waving this as a sort of, look, this is a very high-profile seat if they go and take this from a Richmond seat, which is obviously contested currently by the former Prime Minister. If they win that, obviously, it shows a big move, and then it would make sense to put a high-profile candidate in. But
who would you be thinking of, do you think?
But it has to be someone that appeals to
high-profile,
nice South London types.
Reformer.
Come on, but this is Richmond in Yorkshire.
Yeah.
Oh, of course,
it is. But the problem with high-profile people, as Monty Panesar showed, is that if you're not inured in politics, and then you get asked all these questions, which you will as a by-election candidate, you know, what do you think about Gaza? What about this? What about that? And you can go terribly wrong.
Yes, but a high-profile candidate could well be, and this is what I would suspect, is a high-profile former Tory who lost at the last election.
Any names?
No. But I bet that's
so somebody who would stand for reform.
Instead, yeah, a former Tory who would stand for reform.
Who would that be? Who would that be?
I don't know. Text him.
There's several around.
Yes, but it is also Nigel being bored of not being in the newspapers for a whole week and wanting to go back to make headlines. Because, as you say, I mean, this is a by-election that technically, if we believe everything Rishi Sunak says, is never going to happen or won't happen. Well, the by-election won't happen.
Again, you've obviously got to have someone who knows the locality up there as well. I think we talked about Mike Pansard just now and about having someone that then doesn't know the issues and doesn't know politically what's going on in Britain. It's a non-starter.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Right. Shall we have a look at a bit of sparkling wine? I can imagine you knocking back the odd bottle or two of an evening, Scarlett.
I don't... Actually, myself, I prefer Sauvignon Blanc, and I did knock back quite a lot last night.
Oh, yes.
And many nights before that. So this story is it shows that English champagne... We're not allowed to call it champagne, although possibly because we're not in the EU anymore, we can. But technically, champagne has to be made in Champagne in France. But actually, because... partly, I think, because of climate change, because we're getting hotter and hotter, is that we are being able to make grapes that don't just make really nice wine, but actually we're beginning to make champagne. So we'll all be able to have English wine and English champagne.
A lot of people say the English sparkling wine is every bit as good as French champagne now. And a lot of the grapes are the same. They're the same vines because they've been brought over from Champagne. It's just that we can't call it champagne. And they're growing those grapes, successfully making beautiful wine as far north, I think even further north than Oxfordshire, because I was with Raymond Blanc the other day.
Oh, wow.
who's growing a vineyard.
Oh, right.
And he said, you know, they expect to be able to produce wine within a couple of years now. And he said, you know, these grapes are growing brilliantly in Oxfordshire.
Yeah.
And I think there are vineyards even further north that are now producing fantastic wine.
Because the climate's changing, the terroir is supposedly quite similar now because of the rainfall.
Yeah. I mean, certainly, I've heard of people saying that there's really good wine in Herefordshire. So it is quite far north. I mean, what's interesting about this whole champagne thing is I tend to buy Prosecco because it's cheaper. Prosecco's really nice. I mean, you do sort of think champagne can be slightly overrated.
Yeah, well, you know, English champagne might be cheaper.
English champagne might be wonderful.
We're out of time. Thank you both. See you later.
Here's Ellie with the weather.
soft to warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Ashley will bring strong winds and heavy rain to much of the UK today, with amber and yellow weather warnings in force. The area of rain that we can see out there at the moment continues to push its way eastwards through this morning, but it's in western parts of Scotland that we'll see those strongest winds today. Gusts of 70 to 80 miles an hour are possible, but even along Irish Sea coastal regions, we could still see those gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour. As that rain band pushes its way eastwards, it will turn a little drier across much of England and Wales, and temperatures still above average for the time of year, though definitely feeling cooler than we saw yesterday. As we then go into this evening, we start to see a further area of rain moving in from the northwest as we go through Sunday evening. This affecting parts of Northern Ireland and particularly parts of Scotland, where we could see some heavy downpours over the high ground. Turning a little more showery as we go further east, but those outbreaks of rain do continue across parts of Northern Ireland through the evening, so perhaps leading some localised flooding in places. For much of England and Wales, though, it will be a mostly dry end to the day on Sunday. Perhaps still a little cloud and rain just lingering in the very far southeast for a time, but that clearing its way eastwards as we go into the early hours of Monday morning. Still remaining very wet and blustery across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and the winds gradually easing as we go through the early hours of Monday, but still remaining very windy to start the day. It will be quite a mild start to the day on Monday as well. Temperatures generally remaining in the double figures for most places, particularly where that cloud persists overnight, and still remaining very blustery to start on Monday. But those winds will gradually start to ease as we go through the day, though the showers still pushing in from the west, spreading their way eastwards through the morning. A little cloudier across the very far south of England. Got this next area of rain just skirting along the very far southeast coast as we go through the afternoon. So a bit of a damp end to the day here and plenty of showers elsewhere, with temperatures a little closer to average for the time of year, 15 or 16 in the south and around 12 or 13 further north.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
They suck.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
Oh, no, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Today, the government's crackdown on benefit fraud.
Those who cheat the system could have their bank accounts raided by Number 10 in a bid to clamp down on welfare fraud.
The Work and Pensions Secretary, Liz Kendall, says it's absurd that current measures have become so outdated.
Meanwhile, the Health Secretary is set to hand out smart medical tech to monitor serious health conditions as part of a 10-year plan to save the NHS.
The King and Queen have been to a church service in Sydney as they get stuck into their tour of Australia.
The six-time Olympic cycling champion, Sir Chris Hoy, has announced he has terminal cancer and he's got 2 to 4 years to live.
Now, has Sir Keir Starmer gone too far? That's because a portrait of Shakespeare has been taken down from number 10.
The UK is braced for destructive weather as danger to life warning is issued by the Met Office.
Storm Ashley will bring some strong winds and heavy rain for much of the UK today, with weather warnings in force. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
And turning to today's sport, in football, ill discipline costs Arsenal as they lose to Bournemouth. And it's all over in the sailing as New Zealand beat Britain in the America's Cup.
It's just gone 8 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast. How well do you know your Roman Britain? Sorry.
Roman Britain?
Yeah, well, somebody has just said, we were talking about climate change possibly meaning that you can now grow champagne grapes in Britain as far north as sort of Oxfordshire, Herefordshire, places like that. But somebody's been in touch and said, hang on a minute, in Roman Britain they had vineyards in Britain. I'm not sure they had vineyards, but...
I don't know.
I don't know. Oh, it's Christina. Hi, Christina.
Christina.
The Romans had vineyards in the north and even in Scotland. I don't know what the champagne would have tasted
It could have been a
like.
lot hotter 2,000 years ago.
Well, yes, it could. True.
There or thereabouts, 1,500 years ago. Yeah, I don't know. We should look that up.
Yeah, if there are any history teachers watching or anyone
Christina's
like that
right.
who knows.
She's normally right.
Yeah, is she?
Yeah. Can I tell you what I've seen today? And I just wanted to raise it because I'm disgusted, actually. I don't often get disgusted, but I am disgusted. It's in one of the newspapers. I won't say which one, but there's a big advert for Liam, 1993 to 2024 souvenir issue, souvenir tribute, a glossy mag, $6.99. On sale now at Amazon, WH Smith and local newsagents.
Oh, that
Talk
strikes
about
us.
cashing in on the tragedy. I mean, I know the papers are all doing it sells papers and they've got their pull-outs and all the rest of it. But someone's got to knock together this glossy mag and they're flogging it everywhere for $6.99. That's someone making a whole load of cash out of the fact that someone's just died.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that sits so badly with me. I can't believe it. I'm really shocked. Maybe am I being a snowflake?
I don't know.
No, I don't know.
I don't think so, because it's one thing a newspaper reports the news, and yes, they will do. They'll devote a lot of pages to Liam Payne, and you could say that that's sort of exploiting grief as well to sell newspapers. But they're not selling them for $6.99.
No,
A unique tribute to a modern pop icon, it says.
Oh, well, I would encourage you not to buy it if you're of that age where you... But a lot of teenagers will.
Let us know what you think.
Do let us know. I hope I'm not being snowflakey. I just think...
No, I don't think you are.
I just find that really distasteful.
I know what you mean.
Anyway.
OK.
Is it distasteful for the government to put their hands in our bank accounts?
I think, yes.
Anyway, anyone who's cheating on the benefits system could have their bank accounts raided by the Department for Work and Pensions.
That's part of new measures in a crackdown on welfare fraud, which would also see private companies like airlines forced to pass information on to investigators.
Well, some are criticising it for being too intrusive, but Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall says it's absurd that current measures are so outdated.
Well, joining us in the studio is the former Special Advisor to Michael Gove. Charlie Rowley is with us. When you first heard of this, did you think it would work? I mean, the idea of government being able to reach into your bank account if they feel that you have defrauded them in some way?
Well, there's many criticisms where the state overreaches and does too much when it doesn't need to, and is too much of a bureaucratic. It causes too much bureaucracy within the system. But I think when it comes to the basic principle of fairness, and every year, every budget, regardless of the government, they talk about reducing the welfare bill. There are too many people that are not in work, that are claiming benefits, that could be at work, that could be making a contribution, that could be earning more than sort of, relying on the state. If you have people that are undermining the basic sort of principle of fairness in this country, that are cheating the system, where it's costing the Treasury about 1.6 billion, I think, over the next 5 years, then, when can the state do something that is positive? And if you have someone that you suspect is defrauding the public, effectively, claiming benefits when there shouldn't be, having a greater power to step in and right that wrong, I don't think is a bad thing, necessarily.
Except it's like all of these things. It's the law of unintended consequences, isn't it? So if someone's defrauding the system, getting the money back makes sense. However, there's got to be caveats, hasn't there, to make sure that actually once that rule is there, that they can't just dip into all of our accounts left, right and centre.
Well, that's the worry. And, how far do these powers go? Who are they sort of going to investigate? There has to be some sort of strong suspicion that somebody is, and there must be evidence that someone is claiming benefits, maybe it's incapacity benefit or whatever, that they shouldn't be claiming, for then the state to be able to intervene in such a way that doesn't clobber actually people or actually involve people to become investigated when they are ill or sick or when they are actually entitled to claim that benefit, and that might have severe consequences for them also. So there has to be protections for obviously people who are in need of that benefit. We have benefits for a reason, and it is right that we have that safety net for people that need it. But those that are cheating the system, the idea that the only way that you can get that money back or to take them to task is by going through the laborious court process, and we know that there are so many, there's such a backlog in the court system. This does seem to be a way to probably not only go after the bad uns, the people that are taking us all for a bit of a ride, but also to prevent people from going down that path of trying to defraud us in the first place.
Yes, and we've certainly had anecdotal evidence from people just watching us this morning saying that they are aware that there are some people who are really exploiting the system and managing to get away with it. But on the other hand, would it actually claw back that much money? Would it make much of a difference to, Rachel Reeves's budget?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, 1.6 billion, I think it's over the next 5 years, doesn't sound particularly much when obviously the Treasury are briefing out that, Rachel Reeves is about to raise income into the Treasury through taxes and through a little bit of borrowing to about 40 billion. Now, that's an eye-watering amount for anyone listening. And obviously there's lots of worry, I think, across the country now, whether it's going to come through inheritance tax, whether it's going to come through getting rid of the fuel duty payment that's been in place for such a long time. These are people that rely on their vehicles for work every day are now going to face a 7p extra penalty at the pump. Potentially. We'll never know until we hear the budget, so it's all speculation at this stage. But coupled with the winter fuel payments that's been taken from pensioners, it is a bit doom and gloom for people across this country.
But it is a money-saving venture. I mean, those figures vary, and it could end up being a lot of money that is clawed back. Isn't there an argument to say, well, actually, spending money is a problem at the minute, but invest a bit more into saying that people are being monitored more at the benefits office when people are putting claims in, whether it's in person or done. That should be checked a bit more thoroughly, shouldn't it?
I think that's right. There has to be the sort of that rigorous sort of process at the very top if you're going to become a claimant. But there has to be, I think, that balance between sort of the carrot and the stick, if I can put it like that. I think it sounds a bit in crude terms, but encouraging people who are not currently in work and currently on benefits who can work to go to work. Now, whether that's because you employ more careers advisors or people who are able to get you from where you are to have a bit more skills and training to then back into the workplace, but also preventing people who, as I say, think that the benefits system in this country is far too soft and it's easier to claim benefits rather than not go to work.
I hate to contradict myself. I do try and take a centre line in all these things because that's basically what we're paid to do. But I was just thinking, as I said that, and I do think these things should be more thoroughly investigated. However, where's the common sense in all of this? Because certainly there are people, and I know people who are actually very severely disabled, who over the last couple of years have had to go through these very, very rigorous 30-page questionnaires about why they're not going to go and try and find a job. When people who literally are wheelchair-bound and, stroke victims and things who can't even speak properly or paralysed down one side of their body. So it's like this. We don't have any common sense in the system,
and that's exactly what it is. Clearly, those people that you were just describing. Clearly, the system is there to support those people that can't really necessarily work, who probably actually do want to go back to work and probably would like.
They would like
what
to.
Their life. Yeah, exactly. But what you've seen over the last few years, particularly since COVID, obviously with a work from home culture, but obviously since COVID, lots of people are claiming benefits that are off sick through mental health illness more than perhaps being incapacitated in any way. So it's trying to make sure that you can get those people off the benefit system into work. That's one way of doing it, but also making sure that you're clamping down on people that are, out there to just that think it's easier and I wouldn't go as far as others to call it a lifestyle choice, but have chosen the path of being able to claim benefits and not working because you can earn more on benefits than you can doing maybe a part-time job. That simply isn't fair, and it's not right.
It's interesting, isn't it, that Keir Starmer's got this big job now of trying to balance the books, he's obviously instructed Rachel Reeves that she's got to try and claw in as much money from anywhere at the moment. Don't worry about offending people. We've got another 5 years. And at the same time, give people like Wes Streeting enough money to do the reforming that he wants to do. And he's announced now that we're going to hear more of it tomorrow, I think, this idea of trying to invest in preventative health rather than let any of us just turn up at hospital.
Sort of smart tech.
Clever smartphone, not phones, smart watches.
Well, watches and smart rings.
Monitors and things like that.
Yes, I mean, interesting concept. And I think that there should be an open mind about that debate because, in going into the NHS in the first place is obviously going to be better in the long term. And cheaper in the long term.
And it's been trialled somewhere in various regions, apparently. The whole thing has already been trialled and is generally considered to be successful.
And I think people will look, the trouble I think that the government's got itself in is that in the run-up to the election, the Labour Party was so far ahead in the polls, on reflection, and hindsight's a wonderful thing, I know, but there must be some Labour advisors probably sitting around the table in Number 10 thinking now, did we really need to, rule out, increases in taxes, so when it came to income tax, national insurance and VAT, they've backed themselves into that corner where now there's this, discussion about semantics, whether it was national insurance contribution on employers rather than the self-employed and employees. So that is, they're going to run the risk of, reneging and U-turning on some of their policies, when actually, when we're talking about things like the NHS, which is very important, everybody's willing this government on, I think, when it comes to NHS reforms because of the state of the NHS. And when you hear stories that are, national, whether it's inheritance tax, trying to, when you hear about maybe you're going to be clobbered by inheritance tax is what I'm trying to say, but at the same time, when social care is in such a state and you want the NHS to reform, people will be very happy to make sure that actually you don't have to sell your home in order to fund somebody's care costs, but the care system should be there and it should have all the money it needs to be able to protect you in that older age life or in that particular care. But you can't just keep throwing money good after bad in a broken NHS system, which the Health Secretary has indicated. So any reforms that can go into the NHS, any money that can go into it should, but it needs the reform as well to make sure that we're not doing things, as I say, like selling our homes to fund social care.
It's an interesting move. It is, I'm all for medical tech. I use a lot of medical tech as a type 1 diabetic, and it is life-changing, actually. And what it does for people like me is it stops you becoming very seriously ill, either in the immediate term or, importantly for type 1s, later in life, which saves the NHS a huge amount of money. Never mind the benefit to my life and living longer and healthier and all the rest of it. It saves a lot of money.
And also, as you say, people are willing, or almost willing this government onto to reform the NHS because it's almost something that a Conservative government can't do.
Yes.
It's a Labour government that can tinker with the NHS and we all stand back and say, OK, go ahead and try. The minute a Conservative government tinkers with the NHS, that's really not their job.
Yes, there's a historic sort of, protections of who, is better responsible for, so it's the, Tories have always been, ideologically associated with managing the economy better, always leaves the economy in a better state, but Labour is, the party of reform in the NHS and public sector, so it's a reform, so it'll be an interesting one, but everybody knows that there's an issue with the NHS, everybody knows that there might be some changes that you need to make in the budget, although I don't think anyone's buying necessarily a 22 billion black hole or a 41 at least.
No.
There's a way of managing that, and it's not just through tax rises. You might need to make more spending cuts, which seems to be something that is not ruled out, but it's going to be, the budget is going to focus more on tax rises than spending cuts to reform our public services. But we'll have to wait and see on the budget.
Well, not long to go now.
Well, we can get in touch with number 11 because Sean has got the answer to all of this, though I don't think we're all going to like it.
Oh, go on.
This is how we are billions better off. Sean says, stop the boats, OK, close the hotels and put them in tents. I don't know if that's going to quite work, though obviously it's an issue. Here we go, Sean, this is controversial. No NHS care unless you've been in pain for 10 years.
That's not very realistic, I don't think, somehow.
I don't think that's going to work, Sean, to be honest. I think that's asking a bit much of anybody, to be perfectly fair. But it would save a lot of money, probably. But there you go. Charlie, we'll see you later.
Yes, thanks very much. Let's go down under now, where the King and Queen have begun their landmark tour of Australia by joining a church congregation since it's Sunday.
There was a small protest outside, but those protesters far outnumbered by royal fans. And, of course, the King and Queen arrived on Friday in Sydney for this short tour of Australia to celebrate its people, its culture and its heritage.
And our royal correspondent Cameron Walker has been following them.
Welcome home, Your Majesties, just, I think, sums up the mood here in northern Sydney this morning. The King and Queen attended a church service at St Thomas's Church in northern Sydney, meeting the local congregation, but also, of course, meeting the crowds. Over 1,000 people estimated to have been here, braving the heat. Of course, it's summer here in Australia in order to try and catch a glimpse or even meet Their Majesties, the King and Queen, and several were lucky enough to do so. It's clearly a very packed schedule. The King will be off to the New South Wales Parliament, where he'll be attending a reception celebrating the bicentenary of the Legislative Council here in New South Wales. He also has 2 private audiences with the Governor-General of Australia and the Governor of New South Wales, Margaret Beazley, as well. I spoke to some members of the crowd, and here is what they said.
We're very excited for the King and Queen to come.
Very excited.
Let's go.
We basically missed our own service to come and get a glimpse of him, so yeah, it's very exciting.
Seen him as Prince before, first time as King.
I remember him as a young boy at school in Victoria.
I was around when his mother made the first trip to Australia in 1954. I was a little girl at school.
He's done pretty well at age 75 to come all this way.
They represent so much good in the world.
I'm a big supporter of the royal. I born in Nepal, live in Australia.
Now, the noise from the crowd was electric when the King and Queen were doing their walkabout, and it certainly drowned out the noise of a small number of protesters which were also here outside the church to, let's say, greet Their Majesties. I'm not sure they would see it that way.
I want to say to King Charles, give my land back. This land was colonised. This land was taken by force of brutality through massacres of First Nations people.
Always was, always will be!
The King is clearly very mindful of the fact that he's been diagnosed with cancer, and his schedule has been designed in such a way to allow him time to rest. That's why there was no engagements carried out yesterday. The engagements kind of stop mid-afternoon today, and then tomorrow he'll be flying on to Canberra with Her Majesty the Queen for several other engagements.
Right, it is 19 minutes past 8. Let's have a look at some of the other stories heading into the newsroom today.
Sir Chris Hoy, one of Britain's greatest cyclists and Olympians, has announced that his cancer is terminal, and he says he's been given 2 to 4 years to live. Back in February, he said he felt forced to reveal his cancer diagnosis publicly when he was undergoing treatment. He is the 3rd most decorated British Olympian of all time, with 6 career golds and 1 silver medal.
Zayn Malik will reschedule his US tour after the death of his former bandmate Liam Payne. That's as Liam's dad paid tribute to his son outside the hotel in Argentina where he died. Meanwhile, officials have confirmed that a search of the hotel room found narcotics and alcohol and destroyed objects.
Benjamin Netanyahu has promised to punish Iran after Hezbollah launched a drone at the Israeli Prime Minister's residence yesterday morning. Both Netanyahu and his wife were out when it struck. According to reports, the drone strike caused little damage to their home.
Right, let's see what the weather's going to do for you, because I'm afraid it is a grim picture. There are some pretty serious warnings out there. Ellie Glazier has all the messages, all the forecasts, and the messages, bit of everything.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Ashley will bring strong winds and heavy rain to much of the UK today, with amber and yellow weather warnings in force. The area of rain that we can see out there at the moment continues to push its way eastwards through this morning, but it's in western parts of Scotland that we'll see those strongest winds today. Gusts of 70 to 80 miles an hour are possible, but even along Irish Sea coastal regions, we could still see those gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour. As that rain band pushes its way eastwards, it will turn a little drier across much of England and Wales, and temperatures still above average for the time of year, though definitely feeling cooler than we saw yesterday. As we then go into this evening, we start to see a further area of rain moving in from the northwest as we go through Sunday evening. This affecting parts of Northern Ireland and particularly parts of Scotland, where we could see some heavy downpours over the high ground. Turning a little more showery as we go further east, but those outbreaks of rain do continue across parts of Northern Ireland through the evening, so perhaps leading to some localised flooding in places. For much of England and Wales, though, it will be a mostly dry end to the day on Sunday. Perhaps still a little cloud and rain just lingering in the very far southeast for a time, but that clearing its way eastwards as we go into the early hours of Monday morning. Still remaining very wet and blustery across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and the winds gradually easing as we go through the early hours of Monday, but still remaining very windy to start the day. It will be quite a mild start to the day on Monday as well. Temperatures generally remaining in the double figures for most places, particularly where that cloud persists overnight, and still remaining very blustery to start on Monday. But those winds will gradually start to ease as we go through the day, though the showers still pushing in from the west, spreading their way eastwards through the morning. A little cloudier across the very far south of England. Got this next area of rain just skirting along the very far southeast coast as we go through the afternoon. So a bit of a damp end to the day here and plenty of showers elsewhere, with temperatures a little closer to average for the time of year, 15 or 16 in the south and around 12 or 13 further north.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Right, it's time for the Great British Giveaway now. And the clock is ticking, so get your entry in because lines close on Friday.
Yes, and if you want to get your hands on £36,000 tax-free for now, this is your chance to do it. Here are the details.
This is the fun.
Now, here's an interesting one that we're going to debate. Has Sir Keir Starmer gone too far removing a portrait of William Shakespeare from number 10? He got rid of Margaret Thatcher, he got rid of Gladstone, there were a couple of other big portraits that Elizabeth I he got rid of. He just doesn't like them. But what's he replaced them with? And we'll sort of find out what he's up to and why.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
3 incredible young people from Essex are planning to become the youngest people ever to row, not sail, row, across the Atlantic Ocean.
That's about for 3,000 miles?
It is.
Give or take.
Almost exactly that, Sam.
The 3 flying fish, so-called, consists of Anna, Dunk, Harry, Alan and Rowan Daly, who are preparing to row that 3,000 miles across the Atlantic. It would be the second largest ocean in the world, and the trio are aiming to do that challenge in support of the Teenage Cancer Trust.
Well, I'm very pleased to say that Anna and Harry from the Flying Fish join us now. Very good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
I think the two of you are bonkers, but brilliant. Absolutely incredible what you're doing to raise money for Teenage Cancer Trust. Why did you want to do this?
So our third person, Rowan, his friend actually died. So when he was in secondary school, I believe, one of his peers passed away, and Teenage Cancer supported them and their family a lot. So it was definitely the right charity. Yeah, it was.
Absolutely awful. So you wanted to do something to raise money for teenage cancer. Why rowing?
So my dad did it in 2021.
The trip, the Atlantic trip?
Yeah, he rowed it as a pair. Where we live in Essex, they actually build the boats there. So we used to cycle round there past the boatyard, and he got interested and actually did it. He was the first year after COVID. And one night, we all met in the Air Cadets, so one night after Air Cadets, Rowan actually dropped me off home and the boat was outside. We were obviously waiting to get it sold. And I think he was asking some questions, and we stood there at my porch and went, Rowan said, I reckon we could do that. And I was like, yeah, I reckon we could. And then we brought Harry on board, and that's kind of how it all came together.
If people are watching and they want to support you, do you have a
Yeah, we've got
GoFundMe page
social
yet?
media platforms at the Free Flying Fish. That's Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, and our GoFundMe links in all of the bios on there.
Fantastic.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now to something they're already calling Portraitgate.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and this is because Sir Keir Starmer has reportedly, and actually it's been seen in pictures, he's removed yet another painting from Downing Street, or at least put it in the basement or somewhere where we don't know. Maybe he's banished it to the loo. This time it's the national figure William Shakespeare, prompting concerns because people think, now he's gone too far.
Yes, so he's already faced backlash for taking down portraits of Elizabeth I, Sir Walter Raleigh and Margaret Thatcher. So we're asking today whether he's just overstepped the mark.
Yeah, and what do Prime Ministers normally do when they move in? Do they always sort of rejig the paintings?
I bet they do, actually.
Yeah, I'll tell you who'll know. Labour MP Dennis McShane, who joins us right now. You'll know that. You must have seen a few PMs come and go and witnessed them playing with the paintings.
I sent a very handsome photo portrait of myself into number 10, so you can put it up wherever you like. Not notice it going up. It's odd, isn't it? I mean, I think this is a wonderful trivial pursuit now. I mean, we had Taylor Swift the other week. I mean, the poor woman had to cancel 3 concerts in Vienna because of his Islamist State terrorist threat, serious. And then she's expected to come to London. And if you listen to the Daily Mail or the Daily Express, she should have caught the number 7 bus to wherever she was going for a concert. Of course, she was given a police escort and looked after. For God's sake, imagine if we'd had another Manchester situation.
Yes.
That's turned into a huge, huge scandal. I don't know. I certainly would keep Shakespeare up. I'd read a little bit of him every morning. I mean, remember Polonius's advice in Hamlet? Neither a borrower nor a lender be.
Oh.
Rachel Reeves might pay some attention to that.
I live by that, and I never knew it was Shakespeare. There you go.
And there's tons of other things that pertain to politics. I saw Julius Caesar at the Southern Playhouse a couple of weeks ago. Fantastic production. That's all about getting rid of somebody who's too big for his boots, which does happen in politics.
The point of all this is, I mean, maybe he just doesn't like the picture. I mean, it could be as simple as that. The issue is, though, I say a lot of this is nitpicking, and it is whether you like him or not, it's nitpicking. But it's only happening because people are very dissatisfied with the first 100 days of a Labour government.
Well, I completely agree. I still am surprised that Sir Keir came in and the civil service, our supposedly Rolls-Royce, the best civil service machine in the world, didn't give him a chief of staff, didn't give him a principal private secretary, who's the key guy or woman, didn't give him a cabinet secretary, didn't give him a press officer.
Well, it must be because he didn't want them.
No, you need them. Tony Blair, imagine Tony Blair without Alistair Campbell, without Johnson Powers, a backroom guy.
Yes, but he did think he got Sue Gray. And we were all given to believe that Sue Gray would manage everything.
Well, she can't. No single individual can. You need a team. Sue doesn't do press. She's never done press. I don't know her at all, so I shouldn't be calling her Sue. Miss Gray has never done press. It's crazy to go into that job without, a Bernard Ingham, if you were Margaret Thatcher, and Alistair Campbell, if you were Tony Blair. We still haven't got one. And that's one of the reasons. What Alistair always did was feed. He knew exactly the appetite of the Daily Mail and the Sunday Times and the Sunday Express, especially at weekends. And he fed them with stories that were acceptable, whereas there just seems to be a vacuum.
Yeah. All right, well, let's bring in J.J. Charlesworth, our editor of Art Review, who joins us. Good to see you this morning, JJ. I mean, we were just saying before you joined us, maybe he just doesn't like the picture, and isn't he entitled to move stuff around as he sees fit?
I think that's probably very true in the offices of Number 10 when you've got the works that are coming from the government art collection. I think, it's probably quite intimidating to have a portrait of Margaret Thatcher staring at you all day. So I can see how some prime ministers might want different portraits of politicians to accompany them through the day. But I think that getting rid of, if it is the case that the portrait of Shakespeare's been got rid of or put into storage, it's a little bit weird for a prime minister to have so little interest or be so sort of uninterested in Shakespeare, because he's a great artist. He's not a politician, so I don't see what Keir Starmer's beef is going to be with one of the greatest living playwrights.
Apparently, a couple of the portraits he's taken down have been replaced with the work of a Portuguese artist who specialises in painting strong and influential women. Now, that sort of sounds all a bit sort of political, doesn't it? A political choice
Thatcher.
Rather than an art one. Well, yeah, exactly. That seems a strange choice.
People have made the point that Elizabeth I was a strong woman. I think also don't forget that those works are by Dame Paula Rego, who was a great British Portuguese artist, and her works are certainly very worth looking at. But I think that this kind of tendency to dismiss or lack interest in great figures in British history is indicative of something. I'm not quite sure what it is. A sort of inferiority complex or a distaste for having to be a representative of the UK or Britain and acknowledging its own history. I think certainly kind of if the Shakespeare portrait, which by the way is a copy of a copy, the original that we think it's copied from is in the National Portrait Gallery, I think. So the idea that you'd not be interested in having a picture of Shakespeare around, who is a great artist and a great British cultural figure, is just profoundly sort of odd. And
well,
it speaks to sort of...
except, JJ, we're talking about all these pictures that he's taken down. This must happen every time somebody new goes into Number 10, and I don't remember us talking about it before, but you can't tell me it's never happened.
Oh, no, of course. I mean, as I say, the government art collection from which these works come from for government offices, the Prime Minister has all right to put what he would like to see on his walls. I think there is a little bit of an issue of whether we're making the right-wing press are making a bit of a fuss of this. For me, I think that for someone to have no interest in Shakespeare or not understand the symbolism of that as a British Prime Minister is odd. And disappointing.
Yeah, maybe Dennis knows. Is he a Philistine?
No, I don't think so. Very few senior lawyers are. They go to the opera. They go to plays.
He goes to Taylor Swift concerts.
They go and watch Arsenal.
True.
Yeah.
Well, on that, I had nothing to say to that.
The government art department. I mean, every minister, every ambassador gets a selection of paintings. Robin Cook in the Foreign Office took down one of a marvellous Raja from the Indian Empire and put it up with a sort of horse racing print, because he's a horse racing.
Well, there you go.
Oh, there you go. Each to their own, I guess.
Must be fun choosing those paintings,
it must
mustn't it?
be. Dennis, JJ, appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time. Thanks very much indeed. We've got the sport heading your way in just a minute.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This chair's gone.
Oh, here we go again.
New chairs.
Yes, aren't they brilliant?
Honestly. Right, should we talk sport?
Yes.
Mark's here, morning. We've got wipe any smiles off our faces to begin with, because we're talking about Chris Hoy and this awful news that he's got this cancer, which we knew he had, but it's terminal.
Yeah. I mean, he got diagnosed, I think it was about a year ago. But it just literally came from having a pain in his shoulder, obviously going to the doctors and having some checks, which you think as anybody, but as an athlete in particular, you get aches and pains all the time. On the back of getting checked out, he found that he had cancer in his pelvis, hips, ribs, spine, and it's prostate cancer, and it's terminal.
So it's obviously been missed for some time, which is a...
Yes, and the extraordinary thing is it was a pain in the shoulder that caused him to go to the doctor in the first place, not anywhere else.
No. And you think, I mean, today was one of those things that we all have the odd ache and pain. It does obviously show, get yourself checked out, but a lot of the time you just think, well, it's just nothing. And you can imagine the injuries he's had over the years. You probably thought, it's just a little niggle.
It's just, it goes to show, I mean, it goes to show. Doesn't matter what you do.
No, cancer has no respect
for you.
No, and it's...
but what is remarkable, I mean, his by all accounts, a lovely man, as well as a great sportsman.
Love it, great person.
But it's his attitude to this. I mean, I know he's had quite some time to adjust on a personal level, but his attitude to this is incredibly positive, which I always find really inspirational.
Yeah, he's sort of reminding himself that how lucky he is that medicine nowadays can hopefully extend his life. He's got a book coming out, actually, which is called My Toughest Race Yet. Bearing in mind he's won 11 World Championships and 6 Olympic Games. He says this is bigger than the Olympic Games. This is about finding, appreciating and finding joy in life. So...
Let's hope he can, however long he's got. Let's hope he can really live it to its finest, because he's got 2 young children and a wife who's ill herself. And, they need him around for as long as possible, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, I've worked with him a lot around the Olympic Games, and someone that sort of comes in the room and he's got a presence, but also just brings joy.
Yeah. And the most decorated Olympic British champion.
I think Jason Kinney's number 1 at 7 goals, and then I think Chris Hoy is second at 6. But yeah, it just shows you an unbelievably fit human being, a beast of a man on the track. But
and in 2012 as well, when it mattered most, it was brilliant. Brilliant.
No, a real shame. Right, let's talk about something which is, bad news for Arsenal. Very good news for Bournemouth yesterday.
Great result for Bournemouth, You have to always look at that angle of it. I mean, Arsenal, out of 8 games this season, have had 3 red cards on 3 separate occasions.
They should be ashamed of themselves, shouldn't they?
I think the thing is, Declan Rice said very naive and very silly. So he kicked a ball away and got sent off in one of the games. Trossard kicked a ball away and got sent off in another game against Man City. This one yesterday was more of a foul. They pulled a player back. Saliba pulled a player back and got sent off, obviously, because the man was through on goal. But it's these, we talk about in sport, tiny margins that make the difference. And losing 3 points, 3 sendings off, they drew 2 of the games and lost this one, so they've lost 7 points. And that's a tiny margin that they'll need possibly to win the league.
Well, you're leaving your side vulnerable, aren't you?
Absolutely. But it just shows you those tiny little moments of, I won't say madness, because in a split second you've got to make a decision. I mean, kicking the ball away is silly, but obviously in the moment they just lose their head.
Yeah.
Putting a player back, he kind of knows what he's doing, but obviously doesn't anticipate getting sent off, otherwise he wouldn't do it.
You get sent off for kicking a ball off?
Yeah, it's called dissent, because they're basically just about wasting time.
Oh, I see.
So rather than the other team being able to place the ball down quickly and take a quick free kick or get an advantage, the other team kick the ball away, so they can't do that. So they get the team set and get back in form.
I'd put you in as a ref because dissent is one thing. Tantrum, I think, is probably more realistic.
Yes.
Having a tantrum.
Toddler
tantrum. It's like that. Can we talk America's Cup, because we didn't? It felt like we could have done it this time, but it's gone.
It's gone. Yeah, 37th America's Cup. I know we haven't.
Paper all over you. Yeah.
Worse ways to go.
Total waste.
All right, lovely. Mark, we've got to leave it there. Out of time. It's good to see you. Thank you very much.
Yes, we've got to steam ahead, because in a couple of minutes we'll be looking through the papers again.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
It seems that the younger generation's interest in literature is waning. Academics argue that educational policies have failed to encourage reading for pleasure, contributing to declining numbers of English literature students and a shift towards young adult books rather than classic novels. According to 2023 figures from the National Literacy Trust, the number of 8 to 18-year-olds who say they enjoy reading has sunk to its lowest level for almost 20 years, with a quarter fewer reading each day over that same time period. To share more with us about this topic, I'm joined now by the journalist Charlotte Lytton. Charlotte, welcome back. Lovely to talk to you again. Tell us your perspective on this issue. What is happening?
Well, speaking to academics, we can't deny, it seems, that there is a big problem here, and it starts right at school. As you read there, young children simply don't enjoy reading for pleasure as they did before. We can't deny that is also a massive part because of smartphones, because kids now are faced with all of these things vying for their attention. They just don't have to sit down and entertain themselves with a long book and nothing else as they did before. As we see from those figures with people going to study humanities at university, the decline is just going all the way because people simply are not interested in reading for pleasure as they were.
Do you get any feeling that education policy or that teachers are taking steps to counter this?
Well, there is a review of the curriculum going ahead right now, but school is a huge part of it. One of the things that has come up in this conversation is whether teachers now are dealing with crowd control, which means they can't simply encourage reading for pleasure because they're simply trying to get a hold of the students they have.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
8:47. Papers now. Stop laughing, you lot, with Andy Jones and Scarlett Maguire. Morning, morning, morning. Andy, which city, according to the Mail on Sunday, is at migration breaking point?
This is the city of Coventry. I grew up in Birmingham, so relatively close to Coventry. The Mail's done a deep dive into how migration is impacting specifically the city of Coventry. The city of Coventry has had 22,000 arrivals in a single year from overseas. Coventry's got a population of around 350,000. So they've had arrivals the size of Ripon in North Yorkshire coming into Coventry. And whether you're pro-immigration or not pro-immigration, and the Mail is very clear that it's less pro-immigration, surprisingly, these have real impacts. A&E waits are 15 hours in Coventry. One Catholic school now has 42% of pupils speaking English as a second language. 25% of people in one ward in Coventry have no English in their homes. And this creates a seismic change. This isn't just in 1 year, and it creates a lot of problems for people in the area. And we talk about this as a sort of a white issue versus a person of colour issue, but the issue that's very often neglected is that migrants who are already in Coventry also push back against the migrants who are arriving. One guy who was born in Pakistan says he's been in Coventry more than 20 years. He said he arrived, he took no job benefits, he learnt the language, he's worked hard all his life, he's brought 4 families in, and he says, well, he's looking around, nobody speaks any English, nobody's working, nobody's doing anything, and it creates resentment. Whatever background you are, whatever faith you are, if you're going to work and the person down the road isn't going to work, if you can't get your kids in school, you can't get an A&E appointment, it creates big, big problems. And there isn't enough talked about the granular, on-the-ground issues of how it impacts individual towns and cities. He said it's about ideology and dogma, and it's wrong.
It's a fair point, and we have to deal with it. There is no question. And one of the things is that English classes were cut. I think English is absolutely essential. And English classes were cut, and there's always been a problem. I mean, going back decades, actually about women, wives. Not speaking English. I mean, I know friends of mine who have to take their mothers to hospital appointments because they don't speak English, right? Still don't speak English, even though they've lived in this country for sort of 30 or 40 years.
In many cases, the men of the family don't want the women to integrate.
Precisely.
They don't want them to speak English. It's control.
Yes. No, I agree. I mean, that's why I'm talking about particularly women. But I think that there used to be masses and masses of, they were called ESOL, English as a second language, and then they were cut. So I think you have to have integration. There's absolutely no question. And actually, the earlier people can take jobs, the better.
One of the biggest problems is the claims aren't processed quick enough. I worked for 2 years, about 20 years ago, processing asylum applications in Birmingham and putting people in housing around the city of Birmingham. One of the biggest problems is claims aren't processed quickly enough. So people just exist for years and years and years, unable to work, unable to legally work, waiting for their claim to be processed.
In hotels?
In hotels or in social housing, it's a huge problem.
But the
Huge
the
problem,
system
absolutely.
is broken. The system is broken.
And-
It's just
and
we
we
need to see
have
if the
to-
government get on and fix it.
But Andy's absolutely right. We have to process them fast because then we can send people back and then other people can work.
Let's move on.
right.
We're going to run out
Okay.
of time, you two, fighting out again. Why is the Mail on Sunday so obsessed with the fact that the Chancellor has dyed her hair?
I don't know. I mean, this is incredible, isn't it?
Because apparently she's got rid of her black power bob.
Yeah, and has got a softer red amber blob. And then somebody said, how can somebody who's so busy doing the budget spare 3 hours to go to the hairdressers? And you just think, give us a break. Right.
It might be a wig.
I'm sure it's not. I'm sure it's not a
sure
wig.
it's
I'm
not,
sure
yeah.
she's dyed her hair and. You know, like a lot of women, she's just decided to change her style, and that's absolutely fine.
They call her the Iron Chancellor. I mean, Margaret Thatcher had to be 10 years or something before she was the Iron Lady. They're giving out nicknames on a whim.
Yes.
The other interesting story, part of that story that I thought was quite interesting, was apparently Conservative female ministers go to Theresa May for fashion and style guidance.
Well, they don't go to Theresa May. They hire somebody else who because Theresa May started an organisation called Women to Win, which was to get more women into seats, into Conservative seats. And in the old days, Labour used to have Barbara Follett used to run these courses, and if you were in Labour, it was whether you'd been folleted or not. And you'd go.
What you've been taught, what to wear and how to behave.
What to wear? Well, because actually, it's
how bizarre.
It's not bizarre
it's
at
not
all.
bizarre.
It's about learning which colours go for. I went on a Barbara Follett course and found it very useful.
Yeah.
It was one day,
I suppose
and it was
it's easy
great.
for blokes just wearing.
No, I'll bet you.
She
Rachel
did it with men too. She did it with men too. She did it with Robin Cook.
If you're a major politician like that and you're a woman, for the first time you're seeing yourself on the telly and on the front pages all the time, in a very high profile, very scrutinous, if that's a word, position.
Highly scrutinised.
When you're scrutinised, and you end up scrutinising yourself. You think, oh, why do I look so? And you go to somebody and ask advice. And the hairdresser, in this case, has said, should we just soften it up a bit? And it looks much better.
Great.
Yes.
All this talk of paintings, clothes, and hairdos. Why aren't they doing the job?
When she delivers the budget.
We have to have our hair cut.
But we wouldn't be caring about all of these stories if people were satisfied with the government. None of these have been making headlines. It'd be a tiny sign.
No. This is come on. This is the tabloids.
Every time.
This is the tabloids, right? This is.
But every time Theresa May wore a little pair of kitten heels, everybody, it was pictured all over the
absolutely.
papers.
And don't you remember the terrible Daily Mail thing when it was not not Brexit, it's Legsit, and you had Nicola Sturgeon and Theresa May both in skirts, because God knows women are not allowed to wear skirts, with their legs, and they were doing this on purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing, right?
Well, I think at least we're safe, Andy, in all of this. It's been good to see you both this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, it's time for the weather.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Ashley will bring strong winds and heavy rain to much of the UK today, with amber and yellow weather warnings in force. The area of rain that we can see out there at the moment continues to push its way eastwards through this morning, but it's in western parts of Scotland that we'll see those strongest winds today. Gusts of 70 to 80 miles an hour are possible, but even along Irish Sea coastal regions, we could still see those gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour. As that rain band pushes its way eastwards, it will turn a little drier across much of England and Wales, and temperatures still above average for the time of year, though definitely feeling cooler than we saw yesterday. As we then go into this evening, we start to see a further area of rain moving in from the northwest as we go through Sunday evening. This affecting parts of Northern Ireland and particularly parts of Scotland, where we could see some heavy downpours over the high ground. Turning a little more showery as we go further east, but those outbreaks of rain do continue across parts of Northern Ireland through the evening, so perhaps leading some localised flooding in places. For much of England and Wales, though, it will be a mostly dry end to the day on Sunday. Perhaps still a little cloud and rain just lingering in the very far southeast for a time, but that clearing its way eastwards as we go into the early hours of Monday morning. Still remaining very wet and blustery across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and the winds gradually easing as we go through the early hours of Monday, but still remaining very windy to start the day. It will be quite a mild start to the day on Monday as well. Temperatures generally remaining in the double figures for most places, particularly where that cloud persists overnight, and still remaining very blustery to start on Monday. But those winds will gradually start to ease as we go through the day, though the showers still pushing in from the west, spreading their way eastwards through the morning. A little cloudier across the very far south of England. Got this next area of rain just skirting along the very far southeast coast as we go through the afternoon. So a bit of a damp end to the day here and plenty of showers elsewhere, with temperatures a little closer to average for the time of year, 15 or 16 in the south and around 12 or 13 further north.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, our next guests have been working closely with celebrities and MPs to help clean up our planet.
Very important. Think Ocean was founded in 2021 with two main goals. One, educating the next generation to make sure that they know when they're growing up that naturally we have to take care of the planet and cleaning pollution that's already in the environment.
Well, joining us now to tell us more is Think Ocean's founder, Hugo Valdez-Vera, and the co-founder, Nolene Mariappan. Really good
morning,
to see you both this morning. So, Nolene, let's start with you. What is Think Ocean and why did you want to start this back in 2021?
Yes, so Hugo had actually been working on the environment and climate action for quite a long time. When he moved to the UK, he realised that there was a growing problem with plastic pollution and that more needed to be done because people weren't actually seeing the link between plastic, the impact on the environment and climate change. So he founded the organisation and I joined him with three goals, really. Education, looking at technology to scale solutions and looking at how we develop more circular economy programmes. So actually looking at reusing, recycling, actually creating local economies from what people would consider waste.
Hugo, just how bad is plastic pollution around the world, and especially here in the UK?
Well, it is bad, but we don't know the extent of how bad it is. You know, this is not much interest from the bigger players or, some government for us to know every detail of the pollution. So if we know that is from 1 to 10 is 2, probably it's about 6.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning. The government's crackdown on benefit fraud.
Yes, those who cheat the system could have their bank accounts raided by Number 10 in a bid to clamp down on welfare fraud.
Well, the Work and Pensions Secretary, Liz Kendall, says it's absurd that the current measures are so outdated.
Meanwhile, the Health Secretary is set to hand out smart medical tech to monitor serious health conditions. It's part of a 10-year plan to save the NHS.
The King and Queen have been to church in Sydney as their official tour of Australia gets underway.
Six-time Olympic cycling champion Sir Chris Hoy has announced he has terminal cancer with 2 to 4 years to live.
And has Sir Keir Starmer gone too far? A portrait of William Shakespeare is the latest great national figure to be taken down at Number 10.
And the UK is braced for destructive weather as a danger to life warning is issued by the Met Office.
Storm Ashley will bring some strong winds and heavy rain for much of the UK today with weather warnings in force. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
9 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Michael says another reason Starmer's changing the paintings in Number 10 could be possibly going to add Trafalgar Day to the bank holidays and using some of the Battle of Trafalgar paintings.
Well, have you heard something we haven't?
I know.
Do let us know.
It's quite exciting.
Yeah.
We're going to have a new bank holiday. Trafalgar Day.
But just to sort of to add, a lot of people are saying, well, how dare he get rid of paintings? They're not his, they're the country. He's not getting rid of them. I mean, they go back into the collection, I suppose. But I mean, storage. I guess, yes, if a civil servant comes up to you and says, now, you've just moved in, you can have access to any of these paintings, you might well like a change. Why not?
I just think this is a sign that the government is not doing very well because it's being talked about, because people seem to care about this. They get changed all the time.
Yeah.
And also, you have to say, it's not a very nice picture of Shakespeare.
No, it's very dark and dismal, isn't it? And I can see you might look at that if it's hanging over your desk. You might think, I'd want something a bit more lively. It's a bit... I mean,
there you go. I mean,
maybe a classic.
Say, I don't like it.
No, I don't like it particularly.
And it's not even an original. It's
no,
a
and if I
copy
was
of a
Shakespeare,
copy.
I wouldn't like it. I don't think it looks like him.
Oh, I wouldn't know.
No, exactly.
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's not a great picture, so why not change it? But it's the fact that there is this momentum, these little tiny stories which build momentum because people are a bit dissatisfied.
Yeah, but that's because this is a Labour government and the press is mostly right-wing.
Yes.
And this is always how it is. And the Labour governments have always complained about this, that the press don't give them a break, basically. Now, you may say that's entirely justified, but that's what the right-wing press do to a left-wing government and always have done.
Now, one of the key issues that the government is going to do is reform of the NHS. Now, we've been told that it's going to get more money in the budget, the NHS, but also a lot of reform. Hooray, you might think. What difference is it going to make? Well, the Health Secretary is apparently going to hand out millions. Now, a lot of the papers are saying smartwatches. Forget that. That's nonsense. It's not about smartwatches. It's about medical tech, which is stuff which then connects to a smartwatch or connects to a phone and all these sort of things. But what it should do is help people monitor health conditions if you've already got a serious health condition, which could save, ultimately, the NHS a whole load of money.
Yes, I mean, and for instance, apparently, and with recovering cancer patients who are on medication or going through radiotherapy or something like that, it can monitor that as well. So it'll give your surgeons really important data on how your recovery is going, which will lead, it's a form of medical research, as well as looking after you, the patient, and hopefully keeping you out of hospital.
And it could, one of the key elements is looking for glucose spikes in type 2 diabetics, which means they could get their hands on some tech now called a flash glucose monitor, which type 1s can get on the NHS, type 2s currently can't. So that could be a big step forward, actually. Anyway, the Health Secretary is going to be talking to our political editor, Christopher Hope, as he hosts the Camilla Tominey show this morning, and he joins us now. I mean, it's a fascinating area, this, Chris, because but what it does involve is outlay now for longer-term savings.
That's right, yeah. Morning, Anne. Morning, Stephen. Yes, I'm covering today for Camilla Tominey on her show. And that's right. I think this is an attempt here to show they're trying to get the best value they can for the taxpayer. There's been a problem, hasn't there, going back decades, really, with the NHS. The more money is put in, but the outcomes get worse and worse. Looking at the figures under the Tory party, health spending went up by 2.8% in real terms every year between 2015 and 2022. The workforce went up by 17%, but operations by surgeons, as one metric, fell by 12%. There's a problem here. We keep tipping money into the NHS, 178 billion, I think the figure was for last year, set to go up again, and more in the budget. But the outcomes are not improving, and I think that's the question we'll be asking Wes Streeting on the Camilla Tominey show. He is the Health Secretary. He wants a national conversation about the NHS. Well, let's have it with him, because, frankly, so far, over the past decades, going back to Gordon Brown's time, the more money we put in, we don't get a better health service. And why is that happening? And why is the man on your screens now going to make it any better? I do, though, think of all the different political parties, Labour has the best chance of reforming the NHS. I think they've got the permission to do it, while the Tories, for all their talk about the NHS, going back to David Cameron, have never really been trusted with it.
That's interesting as well, because when a Tory government sort of tinkers or says they're going to try and improve the NHS, they're always accused of trying to privatise it, or at least bring the private element in to the National Health Service. But Wes Streeting has said that he's going to sort of do the same thing, hasn't he?
Yeah. And that's totally right. He has no problem with using the private sector to clear operations. And I think the way he's getting it right is he's putting the patient at the heart of the conversation. So many times in health politics is a conversation between the unions, the doctors, the nurses and their employers, and then the government after that. But Streeting, correctly, is putting the patients at the heart of it, and we put our viewers and listeners at the heart of everything at GB News. If they are in pain and suffering, the government should work to alleviate that, and how that happens is not Streeting's concern. And the issue of privatising the NHS, as you know, it was really Tony Blair who increased that a lot in the noughties when he was Prime Minister, and it didn't really increase much under the Tory party. But the idea of privatising it is seen as a red line for many on the left. And to have a health secretary in Wes Streeting saying he doesn't mind using the private sector is I think, a step forward.
What is interesting, though, is notice when we got the sort of announcement that the NHS was going to get about £10 billion over a number of years, announced in the budget, so we're told, on the 30th. The NHS chief was quoted as saying, acknowledging that productivity had fallen within the NHS. Well, it begs the question, if they can improve productivity, if they acknowledge it's gone down, do they need quite so much money?
And that issue was raised, has been raised by experts totally, and that's why there's concerns here that we're just going to be tipping money, pouring water into a leaky bucket. What's the point? You're not going to plug the holes in the bucket, and that's a challenge I think that Wes Streeting's facing. But taking a step back, I think what you're seeing here, Stephen and Anne, is the first formal briefing ahead of the budget a week on Wednesday, 10 days away. You've got in the Sunday Telegraph, you've got Liz Kendall talking about benefits, £7 billion a year now lost, a lot of it to organised benefit fraud. They want to go into people's bank accounts, take money back for the state. You've got issues here from Wes Streeting saying how he'll use tech, smart watches, as you said, Stephen, smart rings to try and check on blood pressure and I'm sure diabetes and the rest of it. They're trying to show us how they're going to spend our money better before they frankly raid us with big tax hikes expected a week Wednesday. So we are now in the final run-in of this 16-week wait for Labour's first budget, which I think will set the government off. For me, it's like going to the cinema so far. It's been the trailers so far, but the real movie starts on October 30th, this government.
And it's really interesting that the Wes Streeting is coming on with your programme today to talk about it, to actually sort of announce it. It's good for GB News, and it's good for GB News viewers that he's doing so, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, increasingly we're seeing Labour doing a lot more with us, and they should do. I think that we're increasingly growing our audience. We're beating our rivals, as you know, on the news channels repeatedly. I should say the other guest we have on today, Sir David Davis, a supporter of Kemi Badenoch. Huge weekend this for voting on the leader of the Tory party. The ballot papers went out last Tuesday. They arrived Thursday, Friday this week. We did our event, a GB News event, with two of the candidates, Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch, and this weekend a lot of members of the party are putting a cross in the box. I think by about middle of next week the contest will be all but over, really, although it will carry on until the announcement on November the 2nd of the new leader. But the voting is happening this weekend, so you're seeing all the pictures in the Sunday papers. We'll be going through them for our viewers and listeners. Also, we have Josh Simon, Labour MP, on, George Brandis, the former UK High Commissioner to London for Australia. He'll be talking about the visit we're seeing Cameron Walker report on of the King and Queen. And finally, of course, Michael Portillo will be helping us on some issues of defence and China. So a great show coming up.
Lovely stuff. Chris, thank you very much indeed. We'll see you at 9:30. Chris mentioned what's going on with the Department of Work and Pensions and clawing back money from those who are cheating the benefits system. Former Special Advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley, is here. It sort of makes a good headline. A lot of people could support the principle of this. It's whether it would work in practice and whether there needs to be some caveats, safety measures put in?
I think that's right. And as Chris was just saying there, it's about £7 billion, £7.3 billion that's lost. The Treasury loses because of fraud, because of people that are...
That's one heck of a lot of money to lose through fraud, isn't it?
Exactly. And the argument the government's making is the laws are so outdated that, in order to claw that money back or to, use a penalty for somebody who's committed that kind of offence, you have to take them through the courts, and we know that there's a huge backlog in the court case system. So being able to, if you can identify someone that has clearly taken us all for a ride by claiming money that they shouldn't do, to be able to investigate further and quicker by going into their bank accounts, or to be having the powers to be able to investigate if you are suspected of committing that offence, and if you do commit that offence, being able to claw that money back. But you're absolutely right, Stephen. You don't want to see a situation where people who clearly need the benefits, who are unable to work for whatever reason, through no fault of their own, you don't want to see those people that have gone through, obviously, a terrible time in their life to be further punished, as it were, by being investigated unnecessarily.
And government departments don't exactly have the best reputation for getting it right with everybody, do they?
No, I think the Home Office is a perfect example of a centralised system of something where, things can go totally wrong, where you don't know, who's in what hotel, if you're a migrant, legal or otherwise. The Windrush generation, losing all those papers.
Yeah.
So the Home Office is a prime example of a department, when it tries to centralise something, when it tries to hold big amounts of data, it can go horribly, horribly wrong. The NHS, I'm sure, as well, has had problems with updating its computer systems at times. So, technology and big centralisation of government is not always the answer. No. But anything that can be done to right the wrong of injustice in this country, which is about fairness, and we are a fair society, and we care about people who work hard, play by the rules, do the right thing. There are many millions of people in this country that get up every morning at goodness knows whatever hour to try and make ends meet. Those are the people that we should be on, and every government should be on the side of.
We're all being defrauded by this, aren't we?
Exactly.
It's not just a government department. It's us who are being defrauded.
If this gets brought to the House, do you think, from what you're saying, do you think it will get supported by the opposition?
I think it probably would, with those sort of caveats in place, and obviously the opposition, whether it's the Tories or Reform or the Lib Dems, want to make sure that people that should be protected are protected. But by and large, I don't see an issue why if you clearly know that someone is defrauding us all and taking us for a ride and claiming things that they shouldn't be, and for too long we hear these stories time and time again, then actually having the ability. This is a perfect example where the state, I think, can intervene, should intervene, to bring back that fairness to ordinary working Brits.
OK. Charlie, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, it's 9:14. Let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning.
Also, Chris Hoy, one of Britain's greatest ever cyclists and Olympians, has announced that the cancer that we knew he had is terminal. He's been given 2 to 4 years. Back in February, he said he felt forced to reveal his cancer diagnosis when he was undergoing treatment. He is the third most decorated British Olympian of all time, 6 golds and 1 silver.
Zayn Malik has announced he'll reschedule his US tour after the death of course, the former One Direction bandmate, Liam Payne. And that's as Liam's father paid tribute to his son outside the hotel in Argentina where he died. Meanwhile, officials have confirmed a search of the hotel found narcotics, alcohol, and some objects that had been destroyed in the room.
And Moldovans head to the polls today to vote for both the presidential election and EU referendum, believe it or not. The vote could decide whether the country tries to move closer to Europe or back towards Russia. Moldova applied to join the bloc after Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022.
That is an interesting one, isn't it? Whether Moldova goes that way or that way, really.
Quite an interesting one to see.
Yeah, it could be. All right, it's time for the Great British Giveaway now, and the clock is ticking, because if you don't get your entry in before Friday, you won't be in it to win it.
No, you don't want to miss out, because you could get your hands on £36,000 in cash. Here are the details.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win £36,000 cash in the Great British Giveaway, and you really could be next.
Right, well, if you had 36 grand, you might be able to just afford an air ticket to Australia. Nearly costs that much, doesn't it? In some classes, anyway. Still to come, the King and Queen attend a church congregation in Sydney to kick-start their whistle-stop tour of Australia. We'll have a look at them next.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Love a bit of baking and share some hot tips. We're delighted to be joined by our baking extraordinaire, Matty Edgell, who won Great British Bake Off last year. Woo! Welcome. Congratulations as well. I'm sure you're sick of being congratulated.
I know, it's a nice reminder.
No, you like all the glory.
Yeah. What was it like winning the Great British Bake Off? What's last year been like for you?
Winning I was not expecting to win at any point until they said my name.
You're a very humble
nice
guy.
Surprise. No, I was just
really
in touch with reality. I wasn't.
Was it quite a close race throughout then?
Yeah, I considered myself the underdog throughout. I think the first week I turned around after the showstopper and kind of saw how good everyone was, and then looked at mine and thought, how have I got here? And that kind of theme followed through.
But then that surely like an underdog.
Yeah,
it
did.
Actually, I'm going to get better throughout this.
Yeah, I think it made me kind of like really tune into the feedback that they was giving me and trying to embed that throughout. So that's probably why.
Could you feel yourself improving as the series went on?
Definitely, and I think also, like, kind of simultaneously, my confidence improved at the same time, and then that, like, little bit of belief in myself probably helped out as well.
What was your strength? Biscuits, cake, bread?
I think cake's my strength. I think cake, typically, if you start baking, that's probably where you start, isn't it? So that was what I knew most.
How did you start baking?
I've been asked this so many times since...
You don't know.
I attribute it to my nan.
Sweet.
But, yeah, I would say... I think most people probably attribute it to like a grandparent or something that they maybe done with like their parents when they was growing up. So that's I'll give it to my nan.
Or the major lockdown baking boom.
Yeah, banana bread.
Everybody all over the place, isn't it? It's good.
Yeah, it's really good. I love a banana bread, even now.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, the King and Queen have begun their landmark tour of Australia by going to church.
Yeah, well, it is a Sunday. There was a small protest there, but royal fans far outnumbered them. The King and Queen arrived in Sydney on Friday for their 6-day visit to the Commonwealth nation to celebrate its people, culture and heritage.
Well, our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, is there.
Welcome home, Your Majesties. Just, I think, sums up the mood here in northern Sydney this morning. The King and Queen attended a church service at St Thomas's Church in northern Sydney, meeting the local congregation, but also, of course, meeting the crowds. Over 1,000 people estimated to have been here, braving the heat. Of course, it's summer here in Australia in order to try and catch a glimpse or even meet their Majesties, the King and Queen, and several were lucky enough to do so. It's clearly a very packed schedule. The King will be off to the New South Wales Parliament, where he'll be attending a reception celebrating the bicentenary of the Legislative Council here in New South Wales. He also has 2 private audiences with the Governor-General of Australia and the Governor of New South Wales, Margaret Beazley, as well. I spoke to some members of the crowd, and here is what they said.
We're very excited for the King and Queen to come.
Very excited.
Let's go.
We basically missed our own service to come and get a glimpse of him, so yeah, it was very exciting.
Seen him as Prince before, first time as King.
I remember him as a young boy at school in Victoria.
I was around when his mother made the first trip to Australia in 1954. I was a little girl at school.
He's done pretty well at age 75 to come all this way.
They represent so much good in the world.
I'm a big supporter of the royal. I born in Nepal, live in Australia.
Now, the noise from the crowd was electric when the King and Queen were doing their walkabout, and it certainly drowned out the noise of a small number of protesters which were also here outside the church to, let's say, greet their majesties. I'm not sure they would see it that way.
I want to say to King Charles, give my land back. This land was colonised. This land was taken by force of brutality through massacres of First Nations people.
Always was, always will be!
The King is clearly very mindful of the fact that he's been diagnosed with cancer, and his schedule has been designed in such a way to allow him time to rest. That's why there was no engagements carried out yesterday. The engagements kind of stop mid-afternoon today, and then tomorrow he'll be flying on to Canberra with Her Majesty the Queen for several other engagements.
No, you have to call it Uhuru or something.
Uhuru, is it?
We were talking about Ayers Rock. In the middle of, I think it's called something like Uhuru.
Something like that. Yes, you've got to use its
but that's what we were saying. It's all very well for that lady to say, give Australia back, but to whom? And where does everybody go if they give it back? They wouldn't give it back. They're not giving back Australia.
No, it's a bit odd, isn't it?
I mean, we get the point that it was colonised.
Christine says, do we really care that Moldova wants to be in the EU? Well, it's referendum today. What's important is not whether they want to be in the EU or it's whether they want to have closer ties with Russia.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's going to be quite interesting.
Anyway, we'll keep you up to date with all of that. Right now, it's over to Christopher Hope, who's on the Camilla Tominey Show.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Ashley will bring strong winds and heavy rain to much of the UK today, with amber and yellow weather warnings in force. The area of rain that we can see out there at the moment continues to push its way eastwards through this morning, but it's in western parts of Scotland that we'll see those strongest winds today. Gusts of 70 to 80 miles an hour are possible, but even along Irish Sea coastal regions, we could still see those gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour. As that rain band pushes its way eastwards, it will turn a little drier across much of England and Wales, and temperatures still above average for the time of year, though definitely feeling cooler than we saw yesterday. As we then go into this evening, we start to see a further area of rain moving in from the northwest as we go through Sunday evening. This affecting parts of Northern Ireland and particularly parts of Scotland, where we could see some heavy downpours over the high ground. Turning a little more showery as we go further east, but those outbreaks of rain do continue across parts of Northern Ireland through the evening, so perhaps leading to some localised flooding in places. For much of England and Wales, though, it will be a mostly dry end to the day on Sunday. Perhaps still a little cloud and rain just lingering in the very far southeast for a time, but that clearing its way eastwards as we go into the early hours of Monday morning. Still remaining very wet and blustery across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and the winds gradually easing as we go through the early hours of Monday, but still remaining very windy to start the day. It will be quite a mild start to the day on Monday as well. Temperatures generally remaining in the double figures for most places, particularly where that cloud persists overnight, and still remaining very blustery to start on Monday. But those winds will gradually start to ease as we go through the day, though the showers still pushing in from the west, spreading their way eastwards through the morning. A little cloudier across the very far south of England. We've got this next area of rain just skirting along the very far southeast coast as we go through the afternoon. So a bit of a damp end to the day here and plenty of showers elsewhere, with temperatures a little closer to average for the time of year, 15 or 16 in the south and around 12 or 13 further north.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed Heat Pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry, tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
True crime is everywhere.
Yep, and next weekend, CrimeCon UK takes place in London